Hello and welcome to Channels Television's end-of-year program where we take a look at the past year that will end just in a few hours from now. Jeffrey Uzango.
Indeed, it's a year of transition for many reasons, which we'll delve into. But we'd like to welcome you first of all. I am Bukola Koka.
You don't want to think about it, but yes, indeed, 2024 is around the corner. 2023 is heading out in a few minutes, as Jeffrey has already said. I'm Nelta Igbe.
I'm Millicent Walker, who's excited as I am.
Really? Look forward to a fantastic 2024.
Yes, indeed. So we have lots lined out for our viewers. But Jeffrey and Bukola, I spent Christmas in the nation's capital. How was Christmas for you in Lagos?
Oh, Christmas was beautiful regardless of the ups and downs and the many challenges of the outgoing year. We still celebrated Christmas. Jeffrey?
Well, Millicent is now, in the words of an average Nigerian, peppering us that she's now in the nation's capital. I guess this may be your first Christmas in the nation's capital. Maybe after the show, we're going to find out exactly how it went for you. But as you said, not just looking at the past year, we also look into the year 2024. That's why, well, in just about 6 hours, 2023 will be our past forever. But what memories and moments will be referenced as the most defining for us as a nation?
Is it the rocky start with a currency redesign policy that left a bitter taste for all, a highly divisive, keenly contested, hugely disputed presidential election that polarized the polity, an inaugural presidential pronouncement that sent shockwaves into the economy?
Or the travails of the Apex Bank's chief, Godwin Emefiele, the arrest of the lead anti-graft agency boss, Abdulrasheed Bawa, record high inflation numbers, historic stock market performance, President Bola Tinubu presenting his very first budget of 27.5 trillion naira for the year 2024.
Or could it be when two of Nigeria's finest won the CAF Player of the Year award? Chef Hilda Bassi setting new world cooking record of 5 Nigerians nominated for the Grammys.
Or could it be the sad part of the carnage on the Plateau, the accidental bombing that left over 80 persons dead in Kaduna State?
Or the solemn moment when Arakunrin Oluwarotimi Odunayo Akeredolu died, leaving a state in mourning. And not forgetting the recent River State political imbroglio dotted by an array of the absurd.
But on this special program to end the year, we would also look forward to 2024, as I said, with the benefit of hindsight, and make sense of this very moment with a team of selected guests across sectors and across institutions.
And once again, welcome to Channels Television's end-of-year program, tagged The Year of Transition. Nyota and Millicent.
Indeed, this year has had its share of challenges, but as it winds down, we anticipate a better future. The rocky state of affairs, marked by storms in 2023, witnessed the birth of new government at the federal and state levels.
Well, new leaders bring fresh ideas, and key institutions like the Central Bank of Nigeria and the anti-corruption agencies have new leadership. The government has also introduced new tax policies with which it aims to reshape the nation's economy. Meanwhile, the budget, applauded by some for their novel approaches, raised questions about implementation.
And amid these changes, the nation grapples with a pressing security situation. Recent attacks during the Yuletide underscore the challenges facing the security agencies, who have pledged to adopt a different approach, despite the hurdles like personnel and funding shortages.
So as we transition from the snippets of 2023, let's cast our gaze into the horizon of 2024 with one of the burning questions on everyone's mind: will Nigeria's inflation dip? According to CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso, inflation may persist in the short term, but is expected to decline in the new year. Now, you might be wondering about exchange rate. Well, the governor of the central bank also anticipates that the exchange rate pressures are expected to reduce significantly with the smooth functioning of the FX market.
Promising initiatives indeed in 2024. We have the student loan initiative set to kick off, providing interest-free loans to higher education students. The Tinubu administration is channeling 2.2 trillion in the 2024 budget towards prioritizing education. And remember the insights from the presidential spokesman Ajurin Galali in his 2024 prospectus. He mentions over 1 trillion naira saved from the removal of petrol subsidy, which will be used to fund the students' loan program. Additionally, these savings will contribute to establishing a consumer credit system, a first in Nigeria's history, aimed at addressing the credit gap of the 70% of bank account holders without access to credit.
So we're looking ahead on the economic front is also a federal government that aims to achieve a $1 trillion economy by 2026. Our esteemed guests will be assessing these plans for the new year shortly. Now, we want to hear from you. What are your concerns and expectations for 2024? Share key points you want the government to address promptly. You can send your thoughts using the X hashtag, that's former Twitter, hashtag Year of Transition. We now begin with a look at the nation's economy so far.
2023 began with Nigerians queuing for hours and at other scenarios paying for cash because of naira scarcity, a spillover from the 2022 naira redesign policy, which the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, had initiated in October 2022.
You will all recall that on the 26th of October 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria received the approval of President Muhammadu Buhari to redesign the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira Nigerian banknotes. By that approval, the redesigned banknotes will circulate concurrently with the old notes up to January 31, 2023, after which date, the old note loses their legal tender status.
This created uncertainty in an economy where cash remains king.
We are really facing a very critical time as manufacturers now.
In November 2023, the Supreme Court ordered that the old notes remain legal tender indefinitely to be used alongside the new notes. However, this has not done enough to allay the fears of cash shortage as incidents of scarcity again resurfaced in December 2023. While Nigerians were dealing with the economic and social disruptions that came with the policy, on the one hand, they had to gear up for the general elections, which had been fixed for between February and March 2023.
Tinubu Bola Ahmed is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Thank you.
And just when certainty and stability was returning with the conclusion of the elections, the President Bola Tinubu made an announcement which had been hanging in the air.
First subsidy is gone.
The consequences of the removal of subsidy was not limited to hiking petrol prices, but as expected, it spread to food prices. Headline inflation rose to 22.41% in May from 22.22% in April 2023, while food prices increased to 24.82% in May from 24.61% in April. These have since increased to 28.2% for the headline inflation, and food inflation is at 32.84%, both for November 2023.
In any reasonable person's mind that Nigeria needs to remove the subsidy to remove the drag on our revenue of the fiscal drag we have through the subsidy. But the point is that on whose shoulder will the hurt be? Should the government continue to behave as if there's no problem?
Another major pronouncement of the president was the unification of the various foreign exchange windows.
Central Bank must work towards a unified exchange rate.
However, this has been difficult to achieve, as a naira to the dollar, which had gone from less than 500 naira for a dollar in May 2023 to more than 1,000 naira to a dollar by December 2023. The continued squeeze in the FX space and drop in the value of the naira has discouraged the operations of foreign companies, as some have either closed shop or changed operating model to import only. The pinch is also felt in the aviation sector, where, according to the International Air Transport Association, IATA, as of August 2023, Nigeria accounts for $783 million of airlines' blocked funds, with the threat of foreign airlines exiting the country still on. The hike in jet fuel was another aftermath of the shortage of FX and drop in the value of the naira. There were also near mishap in the sector. For instance, on September the 9th, 2023, a United Airlines plane skidded off the runway in Lagos. On November the 14th, 62 passengers escaped death when a ValueJet aircraft skidded off the runway at the Port Harcourt International Airport in Rivers State. There was also a Cali Air commercial aircraft that broke down on the runway on November the 12th, leading to flight disruptions at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Perhaps seeking an elaborate and permanent solution, President Tinubu effected a shake-up in the leadership of the aviation industry in December 2023. The bright side for 2023, however, lies in the Nigeria's equity market. Investors seem to embrace the victory of President Tinubu as benchmark indicator performance surged from 50,000 level to above 72,000 level in December 2023. As 2023 draws to a close and Nigerians look forward to 2024, they expect to get some benefit from some of those economic reforms of President Bola Tinubu, which has been applauded by both the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, such as benefits from the removal of fuel subsidy and the unification of the FX windows, among others. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
Well, 2023 that is about to come to an end is what we call the year of the transition, because this is the year we got a new president and he's already presented his budget to the people of Nigeria. 27.5 trillion naira, that has been upscaled and reviewed forward or upward to about 28.7 trillion naira. We will look at 2024 critically and just take a snippet into 2023 as we look at all of this conversation. But whilst we're trying to expect a brand new year, let's let you know that New Zealand, Australia, Japan, as well as other countries are already in a brand new year. So whilst we're waiting, some people are already in 2024. Well, this segment is going to be, we're going to be talking about our economy, how well we did and what we look forward to in 2024, or how badly we did and what we look forward to in 2024. And we're being joined right here in our Lagos studio by the CEO of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rewani. Mr. Bismarck, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us in our Lagos studio is the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. Mr. Idahosa,
thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Joining us via Zoom is the country director, Power Gain Renewable Nigeria Limited, Sheon Edu. Mr. Sheon Edu, thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure being here.
And we also have joining us via Zoom as well, Mr. Temitola Adekunle Johnson. He's the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Job Creation and MSMEs. Thank you so much for joining us. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps let me start with you, Mr. Idahosa, on this particular one. When we look at the basic economic indicators, and I've listened to Mr. Rewani on this, and you look at when targets are set, when you look at the target and actual meeting of those targets, you see that there was some shortfall. In fact, as a couple of them, the basics, looks like we ended in the red. So just before we look into 2024, what do you think informs some of this inability to meet this target?
Well, at the time the targets were set, there was the hope that the plan will work after the new government set up a budget against that plan. And there was hope that those two major decisions, the removal of fuel and the conversions of foreign exchange, will produce the kind of impact within that time frame. But clearly, most observers of the economy knew that it was not possible for that to happen, and that you needed perhaps 9 months to 1 year to begin to see any benefit from those key decisions. So it was not a surprise that we didn't meet those targets.
I think let's now head to Abuja, where we have Mr. Temitola Adekunle. I will also put that same question to you, because at the end of the day, if we have to look forward, it's just natural for us to look at the past and see, okay, where didn't we do well? So similar question I asked Mr. Dausa. Why do you think there were these shortfalls or shortcomings in your own view?
Thank you once again, and thank you to viewers out there. In my own opinion, I think when anyone sets in, when you set in to achieve whatever targets or goals, you probably have best intentions. You know, what I think, or what I suspect happened, or what's happening, is that before Mr. President came in, he made a number of campaigns and had certain targets he was aiming to hit. So when he came into government, there are certain harsh realities, which are what I would rather call realities on ground. Now, those realities on ground are probably what are some of the limitations militating against achieving or hitting some of these targets. However, the good thing is that he said to everybody in the team that he's focused on hitting certain targets, and constantly reminds all of us that no one pushed him to be president, that he asked to be president. So it's not about going around complaining. He's met saying things, setting unfavorable situations on ground. He intends to hit the ground running. He intends for us to, okay, there's been a holiday period, so he intends for us to move very quickly to see how we can eliminate sufferings of people, especially within the small business space, and create more jobs. Thank you.
So I'm going to come to you now, Mr. Adekunle Johnson. And one of the questions we started, asking as we started off the program was, will inflation dip in 2024? And there have been assurances from the CBN governor and from the Minister of Finance that indeed the inflation will dip and the naira will strengthen. Now, but if this will happen in 2024, have the structures been put on ground for us to see, an upscale either of the currency or for inflation to go down? Mr. Adekunle Johnson, that question is for you.
So one of the things I'm very certain about, one of the directives of Mr. President is that we are focusing strongly on production. And we're focusing on trying to ensure that those parameters or those enablers that will ensure that we move strongly into production are in place. Some of them are in place right now. Some of them are not. Some of them might take a couple of months to put them in place, but there are workings behind the scenes to ensure that we strongly embark on a production drive in this country. And I guess it is for those reasons and a few other reasons that both the Minister of Finance, there's the Minister for Coordinating Economy, and the CBN governor, that's where their confidence must be coming in from. So they are quite certain that if certain variables are in place, that the naira, by the special grace of God, will start doing better to the dollar. And inflation will probably dip as they have projected.
I'm going to bring the same question now to Mr. Rewani. I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will want to hear from you as well, based on statistics and figures. But if we weighed it against the prediction just 24 hours into 2024 by Bloomberg that, Nigeria's currency performed abysmally in 2023 and was going to do even worse in 2024, and devaluation again was recommended. What are your thoughts on this? Is it the way to go?
First of all, let me step back. You can't talk about the future without talking about the past and the present. What we describe 2023, 2024 is a tumultuous past and an uncertain future. And I'll start with 3 quotes. One is that it's better to travel hopefully than to arrive. And 2, only fools rush where angels fear to tread. And 3, a bad decision is better than no decision because you can change it. But having said that, what did the year hold? Nigeria versus the rest of the world, Nigeria versus Africa. If you look at the 3 parameters of growth, inflation and export growth and share of investments 4, in all cases, Nigeria was in the red. Nigeria underperformed the rest of the world, underperformed Africa, and also underperformed, the previous year. And so, but the scorecard was pretty simple. We looked at about 8 parameters, in fact, 9 parameters. 5 of them were negative and 4 were positive. And I'll take you through it very carefully. The GDP growth actually declined from 3.25 to 2.45. That was a slight dip of about 0.80. Per capita income per head, you can see went down from $2,202 to $1,775, which is 20%. So Nigerians were 20% poorer in 2023. Inflation at the beginning of the year was 21.34. We ended up at about 28.2, and we're going to have inflation numbers next week. We're projecting that it will be about 29%. The exchange rate last year in the parallel market was 740, and today it's closing at about 1,215 naira, a drop of about 70%. That's what Bloomberg was talking about. Oil production increased marginally from 1.2 to 1.34 million barrels. External reserves dropped from 37 to 32, but the external reserves are what we call the gross reserves. If you discount it for encumbrances, actually dropped further. External debt went up from 41.69 to actually improved to 41.59. Students that passed WAEC, English and Maths, 64% in 2022 and 79% in 2023. The national grid collapsed 12 times in 2022, and collapsed only 3 times in 2024. You already summarized it at the 4 distinct quarters. First quarter was naira scarcity and elections, right? Second quarter was inauguration and celebrations.
Mr. Irwane, of course, there's a lot I know you're going to talk about.
Yes.
Let's now take it to Mr. Ashenwodu, the country director for Power Gen Renewable Nigeria Limited. Since you mentioned our power grid collapsing 12 times, I don't know whether that's a record time in the history, but
in 2022, in 2023,
in
it got better.
Okay, Mr. Ashenwodu, let's come to you on this particular issue. We're looking at the future, and by simple mathematical extrapolations, I don't know whether it is possible to say that if it collapsed 12 times, it will not collapse at all, because these are some of the fundamentals, as people like Mr. Irwane will say, that is necessary to be able to, revamp an economy. So what are we looking at in the year 2024 in terms of power? You're a player in that sector. What are you seeing that looks promising based on the anticipation of the government for this renewed hope budget to put Nigeria back on that particular plateau they want it to be? Mr. Edu?
Right, thank you for that question. From my point of view, the grid in itself is epileptic. We're not going to be able to solve that in a couple of years. It still requires significant investments. And even with finding the right investments for the grid expansion, it takes considerable time to actually expand the national grid, right? Which is why there has to be increased focus on off-grid energy access, right? We're making the little steps in the right directions in that regard. And going into 2024, especially now with the approved $750 million from the World Bank and an additional $1 billion from development associations into off-grid energy access, we're going to start to see a lot of growth in that space. Improving energy access to the unserved and underserved Nigerians across the country.
Okay, Mr. Bismarck, we needed to bring him in since he's a player in that sector. Okay. We didn't intend to cut your line of thought, so you may just continue from where you stopped.
What did the president say at inauguration? Subsidy is gone, but subsidy was actually reduced. 2, there's convergence of exchange rates and reducing in windows into 1. The consequence of that is the following. The government, money has been transferred from consumers to the government because subsidies are reverse taxes. If you reduce them, you increase the taxes, reduce people's income. What has happened that the government revenue has increased by almost 44% between the month of May and the month of June. In other words, where we were sharing 600, 700 billion naira earlier, we are now sharing about as of this month, we are sharing about 1.9 trillion naira. So money has been transferred to the government. And what is the government doing with it? The consumers, on the other hand, they had the minimum wage, which in dollar terms was about $40 in 2002. In 2019, that was $70. It has now reduced to $24. So what have we done? The government has introduced some palliatives. The way the palliatives have been dimensioned and the way whether it is getting to the people is another issue altogether. Finally, investors and markets, the Nigerian stock market actually gained by 45% against an inflation factor of 30%. So investors are making out very well. And 365-day treasury bills actually increased in value, but the rate is much lower than the rate of inflation. So if you invested in treasury bills, you lost 17% of your money. But what is more important to everybody here is this data is abstract. We must go into the details of what happened. A bag of rice in 2022 was 47,000. As of yesterday, that bag of rice was going for 70,000 naira, so a decline of 48.94%. A bag of beans was 36,000 naira in 2022. It's now up to 42,000 naira, an increase of 16%. A bag of flour for making bread was 34,000 naira at the end of 2022. It's now 46,000 naira, up 35%. A bag of tomatoes, 22,000 naira in 2022, is up by 13% to 25,000 naira. And a loaf of bread, I think called agege bread, was 700, it's now 1,200. So generally speaking, everybody's under pressure.
But Mr. Rewani, the revolving door on which all of these indicators are hinged is a pump price of fuel. Yes. And there is a promise, in the year 2024 that in the first quarter, the Port Harcourt refinery will kick off perhaps at the end of the first quarter. And there's an even bigger promise that, Dangote refinery will start working soon.
Starting now.
Although there is, the government officials are non-committal about whether that will force down the price of petrol.
No.
Well, what do you project to happen if these refineries start working? Will it bring down the price of petrol and have an impact on?
No, it will not bring. It will guarantee you supply. It will reduce the transportation cost of taking crude to Rotterdam, refining it and bringing it back. That's all. It will guarantee you supply. And to the extent that it's always, it's available, means that productivity will increase. Secondly, because the Dangote refinery is situated in the Ekpe Road, so the amount of traffic and wear and tear coming to Lagos and all of that will reduce. So significantly, it will increase productivity. But it's not a silver bullet that is going to do anything, and it's not going to make the exchange rate any better. But in all of this, though, when we dimension it, we say that the total amount of money put in is 615 billion naira, but the total money taken out is about 1.7, or in fact, about 2 trillion. So net, people are bleeding, and government is laughing. Okay.
All right, Mr. Let's bring it to Mr. Dausa. I read something, I think a statement about 2 days ago from I want to quote what he said, the Catholic Archbishop of Lagos, Most Reverend Alfred Adewale Martins. He titled it, "Allow Nigerians Breathe" in 2024. And this is directed at the state and the federal government. This is what he said. All that Nigerians are asking for, following what Mr. Rewani has said, all that Nigerians are asking for are policies that will bring down the high cost of foodstuff, reduce transportation costs, and provide gainful employment for the jobless, especially the youth. Isn't this a fair request? And in your view, do you see our budget for 2024 meeting the aspiration as anticipated by the rhetoric?
It's a fair request. It's a legitimate request. That is why you have government. Government has some very basic obligations to the people. But the basis of meeting those requests is the question. The inflation now has two essential drivers, transportation and food. In fact, food inflation is the primary driver. And how do you deal with food inflation? You need the farmers to be able to go to farm and to go there every day in safety. If you don't have farmers going to farm every day and producing food, you are guaranteed food inflation. It has nothing to do with whatever policy or no policy that, or any budget or budget that you don't make. And we know that to guarantee access to our farms, you have to provide security. The security arrangement in Nigeria now is not working. So if you don't have a security system that guarantees access to farmers all year round, there is no science of dealing with food inflation. So you have to go back to deal with that. You have to have a system, a security system that is sustainable. And the only one that is known is to move the policing system from where it is now in the federal exclusive list to a concurrent list, so that you can have all hands on deck as far as security is concerned. The federal police, the state police, and other subnational police. That is what works in all the countries of a size comparable to Nigeria. There's no country even half or one-third the size of Nigeria that does not have policing at various levels down the line. If you don't guarantee access to the farm, there is no talk about food security, and you cannot avoid food inflation. Every inflation figure we get is led by food inflation. If you don't deal with that, you can play with budget, play with policies, but you will not have food on the table.
Let me take you to Mr. Edu, who is joining us via Zoom. The reason will always come to you as soon as we get, maybe somebody just makes a statement in passing about power, because power is fundamental. I did remember that when the president was campaigning and he went to Chatham House, he literally criticized that sector, saying it's a broken model and it will be fixed. You are a player in that sector. What fixing are you seeing going on? And what are the propositions that players like you are putting forward to the government to say, look, if there's anything that has to work first? In fact, some people have even proposed, like, instead of having a 1 point that's 8 points, 7 points, 4 points like they have, sometimes government should just have 1 point agenda. Maybe we'll fix power within our 4 years or 8 years, as the case may be. So what exactly are you seeing that is showing that the president is committed to fixing what he called a broken model? And what are you people proposing? I mean, you people in the people in the sector, the players.
Right, thank you. The fixing is simple. Like I mentioned earlier, fixing the national grid is going to take a while. The slow wins, the quick wins we can make is in upgrade distributed energy resources, right? Take off-grid power, right, to our rural communities, our metros, via off-grid generation and distribution assets, right? Which we've been, it's little steps, it's still early days, but we're making those steps in that direction. As at the end of Q3, the NEP program of the REA had already recorded connecting over 45,000 households. That's energizing over 200,000 people. We expect those numbers to grow exponentially as soon as the DARES program is started next year. Developers ourselves are also bringing foreign investments into the sector, right? But I think in terms of policy, we have the right framework in terms of policy to enable investments in off-grid DERs, so to speak. But what we need to do is how it's in enabling low-interest local currency facilities, which would help in making the tariffs affordable, right, to those rural communities that we intend to take them to. It's closely linked to agricultural production and food security. If we can take power to the rural communities, it will enable them in having adequate post-harvest processing, storage facilities, which would also help in mitigating high agricultural commodity losses at our rural areas.
A quick follow-up to that, Mr. Adekunle Johnson, Mr. Edun. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Edun. In terms of increasing energy access for Nigerians, you talked about that earlier on. What should we begin to expect in 2024 from the partnership that Nigeria has signed with Siemens for the provision of infrastructure to states? What should we expect in that regard? And then for alternative sources of power, particularly in rural areas, a continuation of the rural electrification program, what alternative sources of energy should we begin to expect from the federal government that you will be proposing such that there will be less reliance on the grid?
Right. Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, the new Electricity Act is a good thing. We now see a few states, Ekiti, Lagos, Ondo, and some other ones are putting up their electricity laws. That would help significantly in improving energy access in our rural areas. Talking about alternative energy sources, it's mostly solar, which is what we do as well, solar hybrids, which we can also interconnect it to the grid if it's available. Like I said, we've been making slow progresses, but we see that that subsector of the power industry in itself, of the Nigerian electricity supply industry in itself, will grow exponentially within the next couple of years, with more investments coming in, and also now with the World Bank approval for an additional $750 million, and on top of that, another $1 billion from international development partners. We'll see a lot of growth in that space to mostly rural communities, taking energy access to rural communities, and we have a target of hitting about 17.5 million connections in the next couple of years, which is still scratching the surface, but little progresses, like I would like to say.
Let's get to our Abuja studio, where we have Ms. Adekunle Johnson. Of course, you're the one in government, so I'm sure you have an insider scoop as to some of these things, and especially in your area of job creation and MSMEs. As far as this is concerned, we will stay with this rural electrification issue because I don't see. I want you to be able to explain to us at the end of the day, if the government is able to pull this through, how much opportunity this will create. Because sometimes when you don't put some of this initiative, you don't know what level of explosion economically that will come through. I'll give you an example. Until the internet came and the social media came, we did not know that the economy could explode as it is. So a lot of young people now are either content creator, we have online vendors and all sorts. So I believe that if we open up the space in terms of the power sector, like Mr. Edun has said, it's also going to open up opportunities for the rural people to be able to be part of this economy. What are you seeing? What are you advising the president? Because you're a special assistant. So what are you seeing? And what is the conversation to push for this to happen, to create more opportunities for people in that particular sector?
Thank you very much. So I'm aware that we are in deep discussion with the REA, for instance, to ensure maybe like solar-powered access for MSMEs across many markets. So what we are doing is where you have a market that has a a cluster of small businesses, say maybe 1,000 of them or thereabouts. We are trying to power those markets to ensure that these SMEs come into their businesses daily and they have guaranteed 8 hours of light. This, we've done test runs in the past government. We did one in Ariara Market, and there's one currently in Akpongo Market. There are discussions to ensure that this goes around as many as possible states, as many as possible clusters of SME that we have within across the country. So I am aware that before the second quarter of 2024, this will be ramped up significantly. And aside from that, we are also trying to ensure that massive projects going forward, where you have clusters of SMEs, could it be manufacturers, could it be printers, wherever you have large clusters of SMEs, try to ensure that they have, we create alternative source of power for them. You know, we try to ensure that everybody now is thinking solar, at least at the minimum. Thinking solar, because by the time you calculate what a small business owner spends on his generator, trying to fuel his generator a day, if somebody makes 10,000 naira a day, that is probably not his profit. If we say give and take, his profit is 5,000 naira, and this person spends 3,000 naira fueling his generator a day. So if we say these people even work for 30 days, just let's consider they work for 30 days. So a person that could have made 5,000 a day times 30, 180,000 naira, is now making 2,000 times 30, 60,000 naira. He spent larger part of the money on trying to ensure that the business survives. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, not just looking at it, we are working strongly behind the scene. I think it's a situation where we want to try and ensure that we are doing, we make some of these plans to the public, we make it very open to the public, and the next thing the public sees is action. You know, they are able to say, oh, this was said in January, and this is March. We can see that they have followed through on whatever it is that they said they are going to do. So we are working in that regard, because if you check all Mr. President's trips abroad or even in Nigeria, he tries to chip it in that he is strongly in search of an environment that will be seamless for small business owners to thrive. I mean, it is a no-brainer that we have to create such an environment for our businesses. If not, then we have no business being a nation. Our small businesses must be able to operate on their own. All they need is government's support. So you create the enabling environment for them to survive as a business or as businesses. And that is why in January, before the end of January, MSMEs across the country will now have access to a single-digit loan, a 9% single-digit loan from the Bank of Industry. It means that you can go into the Bank of Industry across the country and get access to a loan. We also have the palliative, which the Ministry of Trade and Investment is handling, the palliative that was that Mr. President approved as a result of the subsidy removal. So that also will kick in. But the loan is very important because, number one, it is a single-digit loan. And we are trying to ensure that this is sustainable. We do not want to start this, and 6 months down the line, it's not sustainable. Whilst the Bank of Industry is doing that, we also have a partnership with some commercial banks, one of which I started is the Access Bank. They also have agreed to give small business owners loans at 15%, whilst we actually push for a single-digit loan. But if you look at the fact that the average interest rate right now is hovering closer to 30% than single digit. So we will accept that from the commercial bank and also see what the federal government is trying to do with the Bank of Industry. But what is very important is that by the end of 2024, we want sustainable single-digit loans to be a thing. We want it to be the norm amongst both commercial banks and federal government financial institutions, because no business, I repeat, there's no business that can thrive, that can survive on 27, 28%, even 25% interest rate for a loan. And the tenure of those loans are not even realistic. You give somebody a loan for 25% and ask them to pay back in a year, in 16 months. So you are telling those businesses to fail before they even start.
So quite a lot of prospects from the advisory that you sound like you'll be offering to the federal government. And I'd just like to get a few clarifications from you about some of the things that you have said. You've talked about guaranteed 8 hours unhindered power supply for MSMEs, the importance of that. You've talked about single-digit interest loans for MSMEs. We know that, all these alternative sources of power can be capital intensive. So I'd like you to elaborate on the structure that has been put in place for MSMEs to be able to access these alternative sources of energy in an affordable way. Also, the single-digit interest loan that you are proposing, is it part of the promise of the new administration from 2023 about the disbursement of 75 billion naira credit to manufacturers and to nano businesses in local government? And has that taken off, by the way, or what structure would it be assuming in 2024?
All right, thank you very much. So let's start with the issue of the sort of structure that we have in place to ensure that these small businesses are not even ripped off anyway, because you might be trying to help and you realize that some people are going behind the scenes to go and rip them off. So what this is, we are in partners with the private sector. And we're in partnership with the private sector, sorry. So what we do is that we provide them those alternative source of income, source of power. Now, the MSMEs pay a token. They're expected to pay something very, very insignificant. If you are used to fueling your tank, fueling your generator to run your business, say 2,000 to 3,000 a day, and you're asked to pay, say for instance, 200 naira or 300 naira for the solar per day, I think that, and that's a significant reduction in your cost of running your business. Now, moving to the issue of the 75 billion naira. There are two things here. Mr. President promised at the beginning of the year that he was going to give palliatives to small businesses in the manufacturing and other SME sector. That is to cushion the effects of the subsidy removal. That is in place. That is what the Ministry of Trade and Investment announced about 2 weeks ago, and I believe that the implementation process has been tidied up, and I want to suspect that that will kick in anytime in January as well. That is an aside. There is also the 75 billion naira Bank of Industry Fund. It is their own fund. What they have done for us is that they've said federal government is giving out 75 billion on its own to SMEs in the manufacturing industry and in other sectors. They are also giving out 50,000 naira to nano businesses. They've provided 50 billion to those ones. They are saying what we can do to support the government is we have our own fund. We are going to ensure we give it at 9% flat rate to SMEs, 75 billion. And that is the one that I'm saying that will begin as early as end of January 2024. It might even start before then, but that is when we have capped it to begin not later than ending of January 2024. You will be able to walk into any bank of industry across the country, provide them and apply for this loan at a single-digit loan, at a single-digit rate. This is very, very important, at a single-digit rate. And the other one with the commercial bank as well, Access Bank, you'll be able to walk into any Access Bank across the country and collect this loan at 15%. So there are options. If you are able to go into the Bank of Industry and you're able to swing a loan. And one other important factor is that these loans are at a minimum of 3 years to 5 years. In most cases, these loans are going to be given at 5 years, in most cases. The one for Access Bank, if you are collecting less than 3 million, your requirements, what you are supposed to bring in terms of requirements are very insignificant. In most cases, you might need just a guarantor, somebody to say you will pay this 3 million or less than 3 million back. And you are not going to be having a whole booklet because you want to collect 1.something million. They are going to, we have made sure that this is simplified. We are even ensured, we're speaking to the partners to say, listen, once somebody who did not even go to school, who knows the rudiments of running his or her business to be able to apply for this thing. So you probably have a 1-pager or 2-pager that just tells you, do X, Y, Z. And then we also want to ensure that when you apply for these loans and you are qualified, it shouldn't take 6 months for you to get these loans, because a business that needs a loan within a week or within a month, and they've been pre-qualified or they are now qualified, how then do you now apply for a loan in January and you now disburse to that person in June? That is unacceptable. We're not going to take that. So we're trying to ensure that within 14 days, these are our discussions with our partners, within 14 days, whatever fund that you need for your business and is available and you meet the criteria to get that fund, you get it, either at the 9% from the Bank of Industry or either at the 15% from the commercial bank. The good thing is that we have other commercial banks that we're discussing with, and like I said earlier on,
all right, Mr. Johnson, if I may button.
2024.
All right, if I may button, I've been looking at Mr. Iwani, and I'm sure you have your response to all of the... It sounds quite rosy, isn't it? What do you make of Mr. Johnson's proposition and some of the conversations you're having with private?
I mean, great ideas, but you see, in reality, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So the reality is that 75 billion naira, or let's even double it, make it 150 billion naira, in a 200 trillion naira economy, the impact, the materiality is insignificant. We went through all of this before with anchor borrowers, rice pyramids, and all of that. And where did it get us to? The reality is that you must be practical, and it must have an impact. Ghana, inflation went all the way to 52%. They increased interest rates and brought it down. It's now down to 24%, and it's projected to go down to 17%. The central bank governor was very clear. The primary goal of this leadership is to maintain price stability. We need to maintain price stability to bring interest rates higher. There will be intervention programs, but the total impact of those intervention programs scattered all over the place will not change the economy. You need investments, right? And investments are a function of savings. Savings are a function of interest rates. So you cannot, on one hand, mobilize savings, which be channeled into investments, at the same time, provide facilities at 1/3 the rate of inflation. Inflation is at 30%. So you can't make omelette without breaking eggs. The reality is that there's a time for this. There will be intervention programs to subsidize subsidize productivity and increased output. But the discussion on May 29 was subsidies are gone, right? Exchange rate subsidy, cost-reflective tariff subsidies, and petrol and diesel subsidies are gone. Now, you begin to give people, you subsidize production in certain areas and make sure that output increases. Only output. The definition of inflation is that output, once output increases and money supply is fixed, prices begin to moderate. The projection that inflation is going to come down in 2024 to about 22 or 21% from 30% is significant. If that happens, then you can even begin to bring down interest rates sharply so that everybody gets, everybody benefits from this.
So is it that you don't see his projections working? Or his conversation, are you seeing it being feasible?
Quite frankly, even if it works, 75 billion naira is less than 0.001% of the total GDP of this country. It's not going to change. It's not going to alter output.
Are you proposing that some form of stability be achieved in the economy before this is implemented?
No.
Or you're saying that the amount should be increased?
Okay, let's take it one after the other. Interventions of this nature, right, are meant to achieve certain goals. The basic canons of taxation, because don't forget subsidies are reverse taxes, that taxation must be neutral, that it doesn't distort the allocation of resources, must be easy to administer, must generate revenue, right, and must be equitable. The cost of managing these loans of going there, 3,000 naira and all of that, it's not going to achieve, with all due respect, it's not going to achieve the desired objective. That's what I say.
Let me come to you, Mr. Dausa. I know in passing, you almost mentioned the Aradoma growth model in terms of investment and saving and all of that. And you also look at the shortfalls in terms of revenue and all of the deficits we try to battle with most of the time. And my question is, looking in between what Mr. Rwani is saying and Mr. Johnson is saying, do you think that the reason why we're not achieving some of the success we are supposed to achieve with that sector, maybe MSME sometimes, because the measures are too stopgap and not as robust as it should be?
But the essential thing, as Mr. Rwani has said, is skill. It is skill. Any idea you have, what is the skill? If you have 48 million SMEs in Nigeria, let us say, that's about the figure that came out a few years ago. How many SMEs will be impacted by 75 billion? Or even 200 or 500 billion out of 48 million SMEs? So that's why some of these good ideas turn out to be tokens. They are just token attempts to address the issue. Because a few people get it, but you don't see the impact. It's a great idea, but the impact is so small that you don't see it. If you distribute 75 billion across 36 states and Abuja, what do you have for each state? In each state, how many SMEs do you have in a state? And how do you share? By the time you try to share it, you haven't gone anywhere. So it's not the beauty of the idea. It's the fact that quite often we don't look at the scale of the issues. You have 200 million people. You have at least 48 million SMEs. So anything you want to do, if you want to achieve the result, must address skill. If you don't get the skill right, it will just be a drop in the ocean. Oh, you've done it, and maybe 10 people will get it in Lagos, another 10 people in Sokoto, 15 people in Bayelsa, and you don't see it because, yes, those people get it, but life is about the same in each of the states. So the issue, scale. The scale is not right, and the process, again, you land at 9%. Inflation is 30%. Interest normal bank rate is 27%. So where does that 9% come from?
And that raises a question about the role of states, in intervening in the informal sector. Because when we talk about the informal sector anyway, we find them, in the states, the different states of the federation. We're going to get to that. But I'm sure that Mr. Shinwedu also has, some reactions to a lot of the submissions that have been made, particularly by Mr. Adekunle Johnson in Abuja, on the structure that the interventions of the federal government will take in supporting MSMEs in the future, in 2024 to be precise, and the rural electrification program, the provision of alternative access to alternative energy sources to MSMEs. Mr. Adekunle Johnson, what are some of your reactions and submissions to what has been said?
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the Abuja studio. So it's just tidbits from the Lagos studio I got. But from what I understand, right, my personal opinion is if grants or subsidies or soft loans are gonna be given, it should be given to producing entities, right? It depends on what we're looking to solve, just as Mr. Rwani has rightly said. What the chairman of the LCCI also buttressed. It's about scale, right? How much of soft loans or grants can the government give out directly, right? I think my opinion is that the strategy has to be in bringing as many partners to the pool as possible, and trying to itemize specifically, right, where do we want to make the most impact, right? Where do we need to make the most impact? Because it's the kind of conversations we've also been having in accelerating energy access. We can accelerate it to everyone at the same time, right? So what communities should we be targeting? What communities have the propensity for growth impact, right? Rather than take energy access to places where they really do not even need it, right? Where would we make the most impact? I think those are the strong questions we should be asking ourselves before we structure these grants or structure low interest facilities. We need to be able to say, how much of impact are we going to get? Where do we actually take these funds to have the most impact? That's my opinion of it.
I want to switch gears for a bit. Let me come back to Mr. Dawson on this one. We've talked about MSMEs and all of that, but there's a conversation we must have as far as this segment is concerned. The last Minister of Finance had mentioned issues of revenue being a problem. So I want to ask a question about, in 2024, what propositions are you giving to the federal government to ensure that the level of leakages we see in our fiscal policy or in our finances as a country is blocked as much as possible? I know that what's the committee again? The fiscal taxation committee, tax reform and all of that committee, all of this is just to make sure that, upscale as much as possible, optimize as much as possible, but don't overburden the people. So in terms of leakages, how do we block leakages? Leakages is a fundamental problem as far as our finances are concerned in Nigeria.
Well, leakages are not so much a matter of design. It's not so much a problem of system design. It's a question of the people who run the system. It's just like your elections. Elections are very easy to organize, where the people who are going to participate in the election, both the candidates and the voters, obey the rules. All government agencies have financial regulations. They have processes to avoid those leakages. But the more you design the systems, the more the people who want to beat the system find ways of beating the system. So it's not a question of how do you reduce. There will be always systems to reduce. Quite often, all these EPs with salaries, ensuring that you want to take out ghost workers, there's a whole procurement, a whole department of procurement in government that tries to apply the standard international procurement processes. But even in spite of that, you still hear again and again that government officials, from the political to the civil service, forget those in fact, set aside those laid down procedures and still get money from the system. So it's not a science of the quality of our design. It's the human beings, the shared level of, if you like, morality, the desire to want to do what the systems should do, or you just want to beat the system all the time.
All right, we cannot close this conversation without talking about the big elephant in the room, foreign exchange. I saw the presentation you did and how I always reference that, the target and actually how it ended. Yes. How will Nigeria help the Naira to regain its strength against the dollar? Because that is quite fundamental to everything, literally.
Okay. Before we go into exchange rate, let me say something clearly. The goal of revenue or debt management is defeated if you do not grow. So it's an economic growth problem. Economic growth is a function of two things. Injections are investments in, leakages are things that take it out. So you have an investment multiplier, which gets an economy to grow. When an economy is growing, all these other indicators begin to find themselves into equilibrium. That's one. But one of the major indicators that brings equilibrium between the external economy and the domestic economy is the exchange rate, the price of a currency against the others. And we've seen this go in many directions. So you have multiple exchange rates, you have all sorts of things. But basically, the thing about the exchange rate is that normally you will find that there will be an official rate and then there will be a power rate. And in good times, the difference between the two a couple of years back was about 3 or 4 naira, right? You bought the ticket, you bought it in Naira, you did everything in Naira. But when the sources of inflows begin to reduce, one, because of oil vandalism, two, because of restrictions and all sorts of regulations, then you begin to see that monies that were to come in normally begin to get diverted. So what you have is that the market, the exchange rate, the power market rate, is always exaggerated from its normal PPP, what we call the purchasing power parity, by about 25 to 30%. It's trading at about 1,215 or 250. If you take 25% out of that, it brings you back to about 900 Naira, right? So when can this exchange rate go from 1,250 to 900 Naira or 800 Naira? First and foremost, it will have to depreciate a little bit before coming back. And the currency, you have to remove the restrictions. You now need to have what we call an auction system, where everybody, including the central bank, will bid in the auction. Once it's transparent, the exchange rate begins to find itself close to equilibrium. You look at across the world, South African rand is about 18, the Ghanaian cedi has gone all the way to 14 and coming down to 12. So exchange rate depreciation is not necessarily a case of death. All you have to do is to manage it properly and have a transparent system. You have to agree and be honest about what the true level of your external reserves are. You have to be honest about what your export earnings are. You have to be honest as to the system, the way it is, the auction system, how transparent it is. If there's no integrity in the data you have, if there's no integrity in the process that you run, then the currency begins to suffer. And when you start having inflation, one, at 30%, and your treasury bill interest rates at about 9 or 10%, the difference of 20% is what is going to undercut your exchange rate. So there's no question, there's no silver bullet, there's no shortcut to it. I've heard Dangote Refinery will do that. No, Dangote Refinery is going to guarantee you oil and refined products at the world price. So let's get it clear. The exchange rate will appreciate, in my view, in 2024, but more at the end of 2024 than at the beginning of 2024. So where do I think it's going? It could go maybe 900 or something like that, but we have to accept that. The airline backlog, that is one big issue. I think they came out with a number that is now $760 million that is being owed, of which $200 million is owed by the central bank and $600 million or so by the banks. So if you have sold your ticket at 1,100 Naira to $1, and you cannot even remit the money, so you have to buy the money, and you buy it at 1,100, 1,200. Once that goes, then the currency begins to appreciate. So essentially, whatever value that we create, even in the domestic production of crude and sale, and we shore up, as long as there is transparency, there's no transparency in the policy system, then we're not going to make progress. No way. That's very instructive. We'd like to thank you very much for your time and contribution, Mr. Bisrup Makriwani, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Thank you for having me. We've also had here in our Lagos studio, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, is the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much, sir, for your time on this very significant day, December 31. We'll also thank Mr. Sheun Edun, who joined us via Zoom. He's the country director, Power Gen Renewable Nigeria Limited. Thank you very much for joining us as well. And we also had joining us from our Abuja studio, Mr. Tola Adekunle Johnson, who is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Job Creation and MSMEs. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time and contribution on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed. There's so much more to dive deep into as we project into 2024. That will be for another sector, but do stay with us. We'll be right back.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
On assumption of office, the president declared that neither prosperity nor justice can prevail amidst insecurity and violence. To effectively tackle this menace, we must reform both our security doctrine
and its architecture. In 2023, the military has been involved in 7 major operations in different parts of the country. Operation Hardin Kai in the northeast, Operation Safe Haven in the north central, Operation Will Stroke in the north central, Operation Hadar Indaji in the northwest, Operation Will Punch in the northwest as well, Operation Delta Safe in the south-south, Operation Udoka in the southeast, and Operation Awase in the southwest. Amid the military's war against insurgency came the aero drone attack on December 3rd on Tudunbiri, Kaduna State, where the army, targeting what they thought was a group of bandits, mistakenly hit the community, killing at least 87 civilians. What followed were apologies and promises of not repeating the incident by the Nigerian military.
The community has been enjoined to view what happened as just a temporary setback. It was not intended. It's regrettable, it's unfortunate, and we'll work with the community to provide necessary support to the community as a whole and to the injured persons so that they can quickly regain their health.
It will never be a deliberate thing for a military man to stand up and aim at a group of people and kill them. It will never happen. It has never happened. We'll never do that. The officers that committed this offense, we don't want to say anything now since there will be an investigation. And we know our procedures. If they are found guilty, there will be punishment.
There must be an inquiry and a thorough investigation to determine exactly what happened and take appropriate measures to see that it will not happen again. And if there are people who are supposed to be accountable for it, will be held accountable.
But this wasn't the first time the military was accused of erroneously killing civilians in 2023. On January the 24th, civilians said to be herders returning home from Benue State were killed in Nasarawa State. The police said 27 bodies were recovered, while the Air Force claimed only terrorists were killed in the airstrike. Let's flip the coin. The military also faced shocking deaths of its own in 2023. On August the 14th, 2023, an evacuation helicopter crashed in Niger State after insurgents had ambushed troops in the Zungeru area of the state. Total deaths of servicemen came to 36 in that incident, and the country mourned alongside their families.
Thank you so much. And
Bi-weekly briefings by the military provided updates and successes on each theater of war. And in 2023, quite a number of servicemen were killed, terrorist kingpins were killed as well, and critical infrastructure protected across the country. The military has been assured of the full support of the government as it strives to meet the mandate given to it by the president. Meanwhile, 1.55 trillion naira was budgeted for the military in the 2023 budget. For the 2024 budget of renewed hope, defense and security gulps 3.25 trillion naira, a whopping 12% of the total budget. Out of this sum, the federal government is budgeting 200 billion naira for military operations, raising the hope of scaling up the effort aimed at combating terrorism and banditry. Although there appears to have been an improvement in the war against insecurity since President Bola Tinubu took over on May the 29th, 2023, more remains to be done, as many parts of the country still experience terrorism, banditry, and other forms of criminality. As Africa battles with a return to military rule in some countries on the continent, the Nigerian military has made it clear that it stands on democratic principles and will protect them come what may. There are, however, matters yet to be addressed as the year winds down. They include, but are not limited to, oil theft, killings in the southeast, school kidnappings, gun running, military and police brutality, vices that at the moment make safety an illusion for many Nigerians. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
And indeed, you would agree with us, Nata, especially the hydra-headed monster of insecurity is not just Nigeria, it's global. It's a global phenomenon. You are still watching our very special end-of-year program, Year of Transition, we call it. Don't forget, let us know what you think. Join the conversation, the hashtag on X, Year of Transition. We're talking security now, and in the studio, live here in our Abuja studio, is Lieutenant General Tarid Lagwaja. He's the Chief of Army Staff. We'd like to thank you for joining us. It's great to see you in person. You know, we've been talking about you, reading about you, and talking about the work that you do a lot. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Millicent.
I'd like to begin with, if, you know, 2023 for you, and especially since you took the helm of affairs, what's your assessment in terms of security is?
My assessment of security in Nigeria in 2023, I would say it has been bittersweet. The troops performed excellently on some tasks. On some, they didn't meet the expectations of Nigerians. We've been roundly condemned for some of our actions. Today is the end of the year. We have our report card with us. There's engendered deep introspection on our part. So we are studying it, looking at the task that we've had to perform during the year. For the general election, I would say the troops discharged their responsibility excellently, to the admiration of Nigerians and even international observers. In combating the threat of terrorism and insurgency in the Northeast, the troops have continued to improve on the level of peace and stability in the North. The insurgents have continued to surrender in droves. The troops have continued to expand the frontier of human habitation, even onto the shores of Lake Chad. In the Northwest, we have, to a large extent, disrupted the migration of the bandits, terrorists, and criminal elements that move from Zamfara through Kaduna, sometimes through Kebbi into Niger State and other parts of the North Central, and sometimes making forays into the Federal Capital Territory. That migration has been largely checkmated, and the troops have continued to decapitate some of these terrorists and bandits in the Northwest region.
You know, General Lagwaja, if I may come in here, indeed, you're bringing out the successes so far. But the Christmas Day incident, and you're just coming from Plateau State. Again, thank you for what you're doing. It's just coming from Plateau State where an incident happened around the Christmas period that marred the Christmas celebrations across the country. But then people there are feeling the pain. What's the experience like coming from that?
The experience coming from Plateau is not so impressive. I've gone there physically to assess the situation and check the vulnerabilities of the troops deployment that were exploited by the bandits and criminal elements. Together with other service chiefs and the Honorable Minister of State for Defense, we've made suggestions on how to improve the troops' posture and the conduct of operations in that general area. I will say the Plateau thing didn't just happen around the Christmas period. I took over office as the Chief of Army Staff on the 23rd of June, and in less than a month, I had to rush to Plateau, leaving my engagement in Kaduna because of the situation that was developing in Mangu local government area. And even then, I had to flag off an operation tagged Operation Akorin Damisa
And that operation has, to a large extent, helped to stem the tide of killing and destruction of property in Mangu local government area. And if I may look back, I would say the Plateau situation has been on for quite a while. I remember very well, as a young officer in 1994, April 1994 to be precise, standing on that bridge at Feringada, and then the crisis in Plateau erupted for the first time because of disagreement over the election of somebody as a local government chairman in just not local government. And since then, the crisis has remained on the Plateau. And the troops have been doing yeoman's job to contend with the threats. By 2020, the military high command had to implement the strategy of drawdown because we realized that we've achieved some level of stability that necessitated drawing down on troops on the Plateau. And as things will go, by March this year, shortly after the general election, we started experiencing another round of violence and crisis on the Plateau. And since then, we have been contending with it. The December 24th, 25th attack on some communities in Bokos and Barikin Ladi local government areas is unfortunate. The troops have been directed to redouble their efforts to ensure that whatever gaps that exist in their deployments are adequately covered. We have made promises of injecting more troops, more combat enablers, and even working in synergy with other security agencies to prevent such occurrences going forward.
General, so that will not take too much time. You've reeled out how it all started since 1994, your first experience on the Plateau of violence. But if we look at this, this data we have, an incident recorded between January 2023 and December 2023, we have a decline, so to speak, of incidents dropping down by 5.048%. Incidents have dropped. I don't know what your records are. We have fatalities dropping. All of them are dropping. So there's signs that what you said so far, it's actually happening. Your troops, your men, and with all the other sister agencies are actually working to see this sorted. But the question then will be, what's the plan for 2024? Are we just going to be sitting back to wait for such responses? Are we going to have a situation where these things are nipped in the bud? I mean, the governor of Plateau State talked about that these terrorists are actually occupying assets, public assets, schools and facilities out there that cannot be used anymore.
Maybe to add to what, NT has said, in terms of Plateau State, because you've talked about the history of what's going on there, it didn't just start today. So what is the plan for 2024 for Plateau State?
I've read out our plans for 2024 for Plateau State. The troops that we are deploying to Plateau, they are on their way to Plateau now. And this night or first light tomorrow, they should be on the Plateau. We are sending more equipment to enhance the efficiency of the troops.
The governor at one time said, defend yourself from armed bandits. Do you support that?
I do not support that. I think that is a call to anarchy. The military is, the Nigerian army is the people's army. It is organized, it's equipped, funded with public funds to protect lives and property. And when we have a situation where people freely carry and use arms, then it becomes a lawless state. But we have enjoined the people of Plateau that they should work in synergy with the military. They should report incidents. They should assist the military with information so that the military can respond as quickly as possible. But to have a situation where people carry arms openly, I do not subscribe to that.
I was just going to say that one of the lawmakers said perhaps that we should declare a state of emergency in Plateau State.
It is not in the place of the military to decide whether a state of emergency will be declared or not. That is a political decision. But I must tell you
unequivocally that the military is up to the task on the plateau. What happened was a political conflict wrongly managed that snowballed on Christmas Day. And we are working to address it going forward.
I know you said, sorry, Auntie, I'm so sorry about that. I know you said political conflict, but just today, the international news carried the news and said that it might actually be Christian persecution, and that it's been happening for years in Plateau State.
From the records available to me, there have been deaths across all religions, across all tribes on the plateau. Muslims have been killed. Christians have been killed. Biroms have been killed. Innocent Nigerians, Igbos, Yorubas, traveling on the road, going somewhere else, have been waylaid on the road and killed. So I will not see it as a Christian persecution, but it's a conflict that is driven by passion. We're trying to address it, and we understand clearly that there's a role for every other stakeholder to play in resolving this conflict. And so we are ready to work with all these stakeholders to ensure that peace and stability return to Plateau.
So there are some who've described the situation across the country as asymmetrical warfare. And the military, the Nigerian military, has been trained to handle symmetrical warfare, so to speak. So we want to believe that the military and the army is innovating, moving asymmetrical. But then, the question of being spread thin, you're everywhere. Military is handling civil issues, handling civil security, not protecting the territorial integrity of the country anymore, which is not exactly what the military was meant for. Can you clarify on this? And how would that work out in 2024?
The military is organized, trained, and equipped to combat conventional threat, I agree. But there's no law restricting the employment and deployment of military on Nigerian soil, like what we have in the United States called the Post-Comitage Law. And so, bearing that in mind, the military understand that we must contribute to national peace and security. Section 217 of our Constitution grants the President Commander-in-Chief the liberty to deploy the military. And so, if the military is given the task to conduct internal security operation, we see that as a responsibility that has been imposed on us, and we want to succeed at it. And so, whether the threat we face is symmetrical, whether it's asymmetrical, I always say that there are two ways to fight war. It's either asymmetric or stupid. So everybody wants to go asymmetric because it's the simplest way. It's cheap, it's sometimes effective, and the troops, the Nigerian Army personnel, and even those of other services of the military, they are rational human beings. They can quickly adapt, and they are adapting as best as possible to the threat that we face.
Are they not being spread too thin?
In terms of...
You have enough personnel to handle all of this. Plus, you still have the peacekeeping operations you're carrying on out there.
Our current engagement on the peacekeeping theater is minimal. We have just 2 companies deployed out there. We used to have 3 companies, and this is just less than 1 battalion. The 3 companies meshed together. We used to have a company in Mali, 1 in Guinea-Bissau, and 1 in Gambia. The 1 in Mali has been withdrawn back home. So we have 1 in Guinea-Bissau, 1 in Gambia. This is in continuation of the international obligation of Nigeria and the quest for global peace. So, in terms of being spread thin at home, yes, we are engaged in all the 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory. And I would say the troops are working in concert with other security agencies. Don't forget that it is not only the Army that is deployed in all these theaters. We have the Navy, we have the Air Force, we have other intelligence and security agencies working with us. We have civilian stakeholders in the Northeast were working perfectly well with the Civilian Joint Task Force. So putting all this into a basket, I would say we have enough troops on the ground. What I have always advocated is that whatever gaps that exist in troops deployment can be covered with technology and equipment, because those can provide the quick wins that we desire. If I give a company the needed combat enablers, they will perform more effectively than having just the number of men on the ground without the equipment to operate.
But I know that if you say that, some would remind you about the mishap with the drone bombing that occurred very recently as well.
Yes, the mishap is regrettable, was not intended, and we have taken steps to address that. But looking at the changing nature of conflict, technology will always play a role in resolving conflict, and we cannot shy away from that.
Talking about technology, the other thing that might work out, again, based on that drone question, how's the level of cooperation with your sister agencies?
The level of cooperation is good. We're trying to improve on it. Well, we have recorded some face-off, like what happened in Adamawa State. We have continued to educate our troops on the need to work harmoniously with personnel of other security agencies. We have continued to engage other security agencies and law enforcement agencies in sports, in our training programs, and so many other activities to cultivate the understanding, the friendship, to enable us work effectively and harmoniously in the field.
But you know that building this, even for perhaps, the armed forces, and then there is also the leadership of those other agencies, they also have to build up at the same time. So if you're talking about technology, growing technology-wise, they also have to be carried along so that you're at par and can function together properly.
We're working at par, like going back to the issue of the unarmed area vehicle. The Nigerian Army unarmed area vehicles are deployed with the Nigerian Air Force in Kaduna. So we are learning from them because they have the experience, they've been engaged in the employment of these assets for a long time. So we are learning, we are under their tutelage, and the same thing applies. We have policemen that train in our training schools in Jaji and even in Buniyadi. So we work harmoniously with all these other agencies. Regardless of this harmonious working relationship, we cannot wish away occasional face-off, anger, misunderstanding, and we are trying to address all this.
You know, yes, you're working well with the sister agencies. How well are you working with the citizenry? You mentioned here that citizens are helping out. You work with the civilian JTF. But there have been reports of information given to the troops and actions not taken, or not quick enough.
Yes, I've been receiving the same report. And when I was in Jos this afternoon, I mentioned the fact that the Nigerian Army has a call center. It's toll-free. 183 is the number. Any citizen can call in. We have watchkeepers that receive this call and direct the nearest troops location to the location of incidents. And we have gone beyond this to engage in civil-military cooperation activities. We conduct medical outreaches. We engage in sports with hosts and other communities. We do a lot to cultivate the understanding and the friendship of our citizenry.
What happens, or how do you react to this report where some citizens have talked about the fact that they've seen a group of soldiers or military men and they've gone to them and say, something is happening here. And it turns out that those men do not move. Or those men turn out to be actually part of the bandits.
We quickly say that it is not possible that the Nigerian army troops will work in cahoots with bandits. Because when we organize our subunits, units, and formations, we don't ask of their religion, we don't ask of name, we don't ask of where people come from before composing them into sections, platoons, companies, and moving up like that. And so, accusing these troops that are working in difficult environments under very precarious conditions of taking sides, I think it does not do justice to the sacrifice of these troops in the field. I've said it in my Christmas Day address to the troops, that the peace, the data that you have reeled out, that the incidences are dropping in terms of the nature and the number, is recorded as a result of the sacrifices in limbs, in arms, in sweat, and even sometimes at the expense of people, troops laying down their lives. And so accusing these troops of taking sides, I think it is just is taking it too far, because the troops do not do that. I must also point out that we've had situations where bandits wear the same uniforms that we wear. So it's sometimes difficult to distinguish who is a bandit.
Maybe that's where the citizens are coming from. These are citizens' reports. Maybe that's where they are coming from. How do they sort? How do they identify the real from the unreal?
They should, regardless of, it is not in their place to distinguish the real from the unreal. But whatever the incident, I've talked about the call line. I went to Plateau today and I got glowing tributes on the performance of the troops. They responded, even though sometimes they get to the location of incidents and the bandits have disappeared. So these were reports that I received on the Plateau. I worked in Kaduna as the general officer commanding, and people called me. And even when I was leaving Kaduna, I was getting calls that I should not leave from law-abiding citizens, from Nigerians that I do not know.
And Lieutenant General, I think you shouldn't even leave the studio. I feel really safe that you are here today. But, you know, you're back in Plateau. I just wanted to know how much troops are there to keep the people safe?
We have a sizable level of troops deployed on the Plateau, and I've told you that we're increasing the number because of the gaps that we have identified.
Indeed. I mentioned that because, you know, just last night we thought, you know, that was Christmas Day, but then we heard there were, you know, renewed killings in Plateau as well. So, you know, Nigerians are really worried.
The General Officer Commanding also brought up a situation where, while he was talking with some people, the vice chairman of a local government alleged that 2 communities were under attack. And he sent troops there, and it turned out to be false. And troops have received false alarms and so many other reports that are not true. I will interrogate this claim of renewed violence. I just came from Plateau. I didn't get this report from anywhere.
Indeed. So if we were looking at 2024, if you had a crystal ball, I know everybody wants perfection, but what indeed are you promising will happen security-wise?
I'm promising Nigerians that the troops will redouble their efforts and will expand the frontier of peace and stability across the country in all geopolitical zones. We are working in Benue. The people are happy with what we are doing in Benue. We are working in Niger. Gone are the days when school children used to be kidnapped en masse in Niger State, in Kaduna State, attacks on train, attacks on correctional facilities. We are working around the clock to make the country safe. Yes, we cannot get to a point of total security all in 24 hours, but we'll work gradually at it. And I promise Nigerians that in 2024, the situation will improve considerably.
Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Lateef Lagbaja, I would like to thank you for spending your New Year's Eve with us here on Channels Television. We wish you the best and, of course, men and women of the armed forces.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'll take you back to our Lagos studio where Jeffrey and Bukola are on standby.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Nyota. Quite a conversation you had there, and it reflects the weight of responsibility on Nigeria's armed forces. And we hope that, the leadership stays true to its promise on the expansion of the frontiers of peace and stability on all the fronts that Nigerian armed forces are working hard to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Well, we'll still have with us in our Lagos studio, former Commissioner of Police and Special Advisor on Security to Oyo State Governor, retired CP Fatai Owusheni. Thank you so much for joining us and for your time and patience so far on the program. And joining us via Zoom, we have retired Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu as security expert. Retired Group Captain Garba Shehu, thank you for your patience also. And very quickly, let's start.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. Very quickly now, let's start with retired CP Fatai Owusheni in our Lagos studio. I'm sure that you have so much to reflect on so far since the COAS had been speaking to our colleagues in at our Abuja studio. What are some of the things that you'd like to respond to?
First, I know the Chief of Army Staff, within the period that he took over the leadership of the Nigerian Army, he has displayed quite a lot of capacity to see that, we upped our games with regards to security challenges. But I must say that there's a serious gap. One of the things that is missing is that I wonder if any of the security institution is doing what they call after-action review to, do a lesson-learned thing. When you talk of what is happening now, we must first categorize, compartmentalize what is happening. What is happening and what has happened in Plateau State is not new. Insurgency. You have banditry in some other places. You just have kidnapping in some other places. We must first define all these things. And what has happened in Plateau State shouldn't be taken in isolation, because the same group of people, I was Commissioner of Police in Benue State in 2018, the same group of people, highly mobile. You must first know the characters of the people you are dealing with. Without knowing the characters, you would not be able to solve this problem. Because the same set of people had been operating within the north-central belt. They move from one place or the other. We've, at a point in time, identified that there are insurgents coming from outside the country. We must first look at the character. Let us identify them. The modus operandi they've been using in Benue State, is it the same modus operandi in Plateau, in Kaduna, in Taraba? Because the whole of that axis is engrossed and embroiled in all these things. So if we don't do a proper assessment, an appraiser of who are these characters, you will not be able to know how to challenge them. It's when you want to talk of security, addressing security challenges, it's not a one-cap-fit-all. Situations are different. Topography is different as well. And one thing is also that we must probably redefine what our internal security architecture is. If you talk of internal security architecture, who is taking the lead? Should we over-depend on the military? We should be talking of, integrated security architecture.
Before you get to that point, sir, I'd like to ask if from the operations of the military, they have begun to do that after-action review that you have talked about. From what you see, have they done that?
I don't think generally, not just for the military. One, an internal security situation, the police should take the lead. And when the police is overwhelmed, there are also procedures to invite the military. This is not the first time we've been saying this. We must look at this and redefine what the internal security architecture should be. And that is why some of us are canvassing what we'll call an integrated security architecture. You have proliferation of agencies. What has happened in Plateau show clearly lack of intelligence. And why wouldn't that be that? Because you have all the security institutions forming an intelligence unit, and they work in silos. They don't work together. They don't speak together. There is competition. They don't see their roles as complementary. It is about competitiveness. So when you don't do that and sit down together and do a proper appraisal and design your operational plan as to, okay, when should the military come in? When should they come out? If the military is going out of a situation, just like Kwaza said, that at a point in time, military withdrew from Plateau State. Who did you hand over to? So there must be institution that will, continue. And from time to time, challenge security now, crime and criminalities. You can term them as an entity in constant motion. When an entity is in constant motion, you must move with them. If the bandits, if the insurgents are going 50 kilometers per hour, you, the security people, must go 70 kilometers per hour. You must be proactive. When people are coming into, they came into Plateau State, it's not just that they arrived. They came in through some other means. Sometimes it even appears that we are over-depending on technology. One very important thing in security and addressing security challenges is the human element. And that is why in some other places they talk of human intelligence. Even the United States of America, with all the drones and everything they have, why are they building wall? Physical wall. If the drones and technology can do the whole thing. So there must be the boots on the ground. It's not just about depending on technology, and you must get the human elements, the non-state actors. In insurgency, just like your reporter had said, those are what they call asymmetric warfare. You don't fight asymmetric warfare without getting the people involved in it. So we must go back to the drawing table. My assessment will now be that there is a serious gap in interagency cooperation. Rather than complementing each other, there is like as if there is competition. Everyone is talking. Who should even address the public when you are, addressing security challenges? Like I said in 2018, this same element, and I believe it's the same element, their characters can be properly defined. These are guys that will come, not even herdsmen, in black and black. And did you see the speed with which they moved? When we were in Benue State, we did our bit. But if you're not talking, if you're not doing an after-action review and do lessons learned, you will not be able to address this.
Let's take it to Group Captain Garba Shehu. There are a couple of questions I would want to ask you from what the former CP has said, but let's begin with your immediate response or reaction to what the Chief of Army Staff has said. He's responded to some of the questions that our colleague raised in terms of intelligence, in terms of whether the military is complicit and all of that. So I know you perhaps listened to some of the things he said. What do you make of this and at the end of the day?
Thank you very much. Yes, I've listened to the Chief of Army Staff, General Lagbaja, and he's somebody that I know from my military days up till now. First, I will commend him for being forthright. What I mean forthright, in the issues of collateral damage, in the issues of certainly there are gaps in deployment in the Plateau. I think I salute his courage for saying that. But what is the cause of gaps in deployment? Gaps in deployment probably could be as a result of few boots on the ground, as the Commissioner of Police, the retired Commissioner of Police said. And also it could be as a result of improper deployment. What do I mean? You could have enough troops. The first problem could be you don't have enough troops. But even where you have enough troops, you need to place them as near to known flashpoints as possible so that you cut the reaction time. So I agree with him when he said that there is gap in deployment and they are taking some forces to fill there. My problem with that is that this is a knee-jerk approach for the armed forces. Since 2009, when we started having our heightened security challenges with Boko Haram, later added with banditry, with kidnappers, with harassed farmers, all experts across are agreed that there is need to increase numbers, whether it is military, whether it is police. But when I look at the numbers, we'll be doing recruitment quite okay, but it is not at par with what is required on the ground. So now, if the army is pulling people to go and put more in Plateau, my fear is that you are taking troops probably from Kaduna or from Niger State or from Zamfara to go and beef off Plateau State. So you see, you are going to have the same problem. It's what we have been seeing in the Northeast. You capture one place, there's another attack of Boko Haram, you move these people. So I do not see the political will of addressing this lack of boots on the ground, which also the commissioner has spoken about. When we look at historically, when the Civil War started, our past leaders, when the war broke, Nigeria had only one division. That is about 1,000, so that's the whole of the Nigerian military. But within 6 months, we are boasting of about 250,000 people, men and women. That was then, when our population was low. I see no reason why we cannot raise the number of troops. Again, I align with him when he said that this is, to me, it's a danger point, whether we like it or not. I think a cross-section of Nigerians agree that the military as an institution is one of the few institutions that remain that is binding this country together across religious lines, across ethnic lines, across whatever lines you can talk. The military is given that not only by military men, even by other stakeholders. Now, when you hear senior citizens, senior politicians from whom other lower citizens or other will take lesson saying that the military is complicit, either along ethnic or religious lines, to me, it is a very, very big danger. Like the Chief of Army Staff said, there is the smallest unit in the military is a section of 10 people. You cannot have a section of Yoruba men or of Christians or of Muslims or of their own people. No matter who the commander is, he is forced to work. That is the nature. That is another inbuilt mechanism as far as the military is concerned. You don't pick people from your village to come and be in your unit so that you're a unit commander. There is no such unit. So it is very difficult for me, with my 27 years of military experience, to agree that a unit taken to Plateau State will agree to fight either on the side of Fulanis or on the side of Hausa or on the side of Birom or whatever reason. I do not agree with that. And I think it is very, very important that this messages, unfortunately, since this started, is coming from highly placed people. When people in where they are selling Indomie, where they are selling meat, they hear these people saying this, they take it as the whole truth. The man is a governor, the man is a legislator, so he knows what he's talking about. I will not agree that there is such a. However, you could have wrong elements. And if you have wrong elements, for the fact that the unit, whatever unit, whether it is a battalion, whether it is a brigade, it has multiple identity, people from the opposite identity, you don't expect them to keep quiet when they hear that somebody sharing identity with them is being attacked, not because it's a lawbreaker, just because of his identity. So please, I am begging the politicians. I have heard this said several times. I have followed all the interviews. We should stop that. Do not politicize the military. Now, he talked about also allegations. He answered to the allegations that sometimes they see people who are military, you report to them, then instead of helping you, you find they are there. Now there is again another danger, the proliferation of military uniforms. Personally, with my 27 years experience, I have seen video clips, even yesterday, where I cannot, for the love of God, say the people I'm saying are really military people or not military people, because they have camouflage uniform. Some of them have even this badge, green, white, green, that the military used to put on their uniform. So there is proliferation of military uniform. And here, even the military and other security agencies cannot absorb themselves. Over the years, from the time of Jonathan to now, we see a proliferation of different kind of camouflage uniform, coming into Nigeria. And that's how people get. So it is difficult to now distinguish between the genuine soldier. But what I want to tell the Chief of Army Staff, please, what is known as a soldier should always carry his name here. Soldier is not an unknown soldier. That issue of unknown soldier is not there. It should be a standard. When I see a soldier, I should see his name boldly written. I don't know, somehow an idea crept into the Nigerian military that if people are going for operation, they should drop their names. I don't think it's a good idea. And a soldier is not a bandit, he's not a political thug, So I have no problem with people seeing me SG Shehu wherever I enter, so that I count for my action. I think that issue of a bandit will not wear his name. So please, whoever brought that idea of soldiers dropping their names when they are going for operation, please, it's a very bad idea. In fact, in the military, your name tag is part of your uniform. If you dress from head to toe, you don't have a name here, it means you are improperly dressed. Soldiers should dress very well. Having said that, we still come back to the issue of deployment, the issue of not enough boots on the ground, which also Commissioner has spoken about. What I have not heard right from the time of when this electioneering campaign started is that almost all the parties, plus the winner, President Tinubu, they always agree that there are a few numbers of our security forces. But I didn't hear one candidate. And up to now, I have not heard the president say, or a member of National Assembly, what should be the optimal size that we need for the security challenges we're having. It is from there that you start. Then you work backwards. Of course, there are other issues, economics, the geopolitical role that Nigeria wants to play. Do you want to be sending peacekeeper? You all put that, and then you arrive at a number. Then you start a recruitment, whether you give yourself 5 years or 3 years. I just give an example. In the Civil War, which is 6 months, we have moved from maybe less than 10,000 to 250,000. It can be done. If it can be done then, it can be done now. Nobody has put a number. And with due respect to the Chief of Army Staff, when he was asked how many troops are on the plateau, well, for some reason he didn't say. He said he has sizable. But again, this is the issue. He said sizable on TV. But I want to beseech the Chief of Army Staff, when he is talking to the Commander-in-Chief, when he's talking to legislators, tell them the number of troops that you need in plateau and what you have now, so that they actually know the number or the gap that you are having. These are some of the things that are ready. Yes. Yes.
Martin, if I may, Martin, let me take from where the CP has said. It appears from when I listen to the CP and I listen to the Chief of Army Staff and I listen to you, there appears to be a level of understanding. Maybe approach is different, of who these people are and what they are up to and what they can do. So where is the failure really coming from if we have all this body of knowledge?
Thank you very much. Speaking frankly, I would say the failure is first and foremost from the political leaders in Plateau State and the community leaders in Plateau State. If these people want to live in peace, there will be peace in the Plateau. It is these people that people down take their decision whether these people should not be with us, whether this one is against this, whether this one is not with it. It is them that set the agenda for this to happen. Any person conversant with the issues in Plateau, like the Chief of Army Staff went back when he was, I think it went back as far back as when during Babangida administration. The first issue of Plateau started with the creation of Just Not Local Government. From the creation of Just Not Local Government, over the years, whether we like it or not, either through migration or through intermarriage, there is a certain demographics that are in that Just Not Local Government. When they are given a local government, because of the numbers, they have the will or the mechanism to decide who becomes a local government chairman or whoever and the rest and so on and so forth. And even where they don't have a candidate, any party that wants to win that area, certainly because of the number, is just like Ikeja in Lagos, it's just like Sabongari in Kano. If you go to Sabongari in Kano, you are going to do an election, you have to align with the Igbos and Yorubas in Kano. If not, you are not going to win. That is what happened in the Just Not. But from that time when that Just Not Local Government was created, we never had peace in the Plateau for one reason or the other. And again, when we look over the years, there have been several regimes. Some regimes have been notorious for inciting these cleavages among the people, while some have tried. But so much so that
Group Captain Shehu, you may need to unmute because we've lost audio through to you. We can't hear you anymore, Captain Shehu. Please unmute. And you were beginning to give us very critical information about the genesis of the challenges in Plateau State, on the Plateau. Speaking of which, I'd like to ask you. All right, I'll proceed with that as soon as we sort out the audio connection through to Captain Shehu. Let me come to you now, retired CPO Osheni. You've raised quite a number of critical issues, particularly about the lack of synergy and, the absence of after-action review. I'd like to follow up with Jeffrey's question about where the failure is coming from. One of the things that we're hearing from the Plateau is that the communal clashes has an ethnic, a foreign dimension to it. And some of the locals speaking to pressmen are saying that, those attacking the people there speak foreign languages. Now, let's tie that to Taraba State, where there's also been attacks in recent times. And the lawmaker there is saying that there are attacks coming from Cameroon, neighboring Cameroon. Let's go to the south as well, Cross River State to be precise, where we hear about bandits, coming into communities from neighboring Cameroon. We've had this, commentary even in the last administration about those infiltrating our communities speaking foreign languages. Was there a failure to follow up on that intelligence? And are these connected in any way?
Thank you. I will I'll take it up from what the retired group captain started. I happened to have a stint at the University of Jos in 1986. I was still a policeman then. You see, the problem with the Plateau even came up at a point in time when the Inspector General of Police, M.D. Abubakar, was going to be appointed. This just north and whatever. But it is high time that we put that behind us. As uniformed people, we should talk about whether a situation has been politicized or whatever. The military, the police have a mandate. The mandate is to whether someone had colorated a crisis ethnically, religiously, politically. The uniform must suppress it, whichever way. If we take that as an excuse and we don't face the situation, we will continue to repeat the same thing. And of course, with regards to foreigners, I had started by saying, don't take Plateau in isolation. Because what happened in Plateau, eve of Christmas, we go to another state tomorrow, and we continue to say the same thing. And in operations, if you don't do an assessment of situation, you would not know how to deploy. You won't know the number of people to deploy. You won't know the tools, the weapons to give them. First, assessment of situation should be done. There should be people that, we do an institutional memory. This thing keep on repeating itself. And of course, when situation becomes like that, you must sit back. It is critical in human's life. And of course, with the military and the police, what they call an after-action review is critical. It is when you do it. That what happened probably in 2005 could repeat itself in 2006. How do we move ahead of these people? And I would even look at it beyond the political thing that everyone is saying. Like I said, in 2018, I faced a similar situation in Benue State. And I strongly believe it's the same set of people, marauders, insurgents, within that axis, coming from either Niger, Chad, or Cameroon.
So they are foreigners.
So they move. The characters. I would say boldly that I studied the characters of the people I was dealing with in 2018. And we designed our own way of addressing the situation. I can say it boldly that we did that in 2018. Then Operation Ayagbatuma came in and whatever. And once you know the character, you have an assessment. What is their modus operandi? What are the instruments? What are the weapons they are carrying? So you'll be able to prepare yourself.
Sorry, were you able to also identify who they are?
From my assessment, these are elements that, one way or the other, infiltrate the country. And of course, our axis, our borders. You have one war or the other going on in those places, proliferation of weapons. They bring in these things.
And what's the end game? Is it land displacement? Because there's a land grabbing element involved, whether it's south-south or north-central.
It is very difficult. And that is why I said that we must first classify what we have. Insurgents have their own aim, different from what terrorists have, what bandits have, because terrorists will probably attack state institutions in order to embarrass the government. But when these people come in, they kill, irrespective of who they meet. And we must know their characters with a view to address them properly.
All right, all right.
It's easy.
Okay, sir. Let's head back to Group Captain. Group Captain, can you hear us now, sir?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, you were saying a lot of great things that is quite informative for all of us across the country. So we'll just allow you to continue with your stream of thoughts.
I just generally was responding to what the Chief of Army Staff said. Like I repeat, he talked of gaps. Guys, are a lot of lack of numbers. But we should be discussing, as of now, as a whole, not only in Plateau, what should be the optimal size. I have to commend the current IGP. When he came, I heard him saying that he needs 190,000 additional policemen. Or in some cases, he said he wants the current size of 370 to be doubled. At least that is political food for the political masters to now chew. Can the country afford it? Under what section? I did not hear the same thing from the military by people there. I've never had somebody, and I've never had even the political master said, okay, but everybody seems to be agreed we don't have enough numbers. Now, if you carry people from Zamfara or from Nasarawa or from where to be for Plateau, what happens if we are not praying? What if happens if that area also becomes attacked? What are you going to do? To rush people? So issue of boots on the ground is very important. Even though whenever we talk about boots, some people bought in, like the commissioner said, they will say technology. There are things that technology can do for you. There are things that technology cannot do for you. Technology, for example, can show you people moving. But you still need people on the units who boots on the ground to go and chase those people away and stay there and scare those people. So it's not everything technology. No matter, you still need numbers, and we're not having numbers, and we are not recruiting commensurate to the needs that we have. And I also touched on the issue of trying to drag the military either along religious or it is only in Plateau that I saw that. So much so that, with due respect, it is even becoming difficult for the military authorities to send a commander to Jos. Because I would make bold to say there is probably no military commander that went to Jos that didn't come back with one tag or the other. Some left there unceremoniously, some due to pressure until they are removed. But like I said, and like also the Chief of Army Staff said, the military is so organized that you don't have the choice of people that you want to work with. I am from Sokoto. It doesn't mean I will go, if they make me a battalion commander, I'll bring all Sokoto people to come and be working with me so that I can attack non-Sokoto people. It's not going to happen like that. Probably my 2IC, probably my adjutant, probably my other commanders, even the field commanders. They may not be from my ethnic group or from my religion or this. So please, I don't want this information coming from the political masters. And unfortunately, it is people high up there that are given this. I've listened to the governor. I've listened to a former speaker. They seem to allude that the military are complicit in this thing. The military is the last hope, whether we like it or not, that we have. And but then, even though it is a perception which I don't believe, again, it is a challenge to the military authorities. They really have to be aware that these things are being said. I know they are not true, but they are to make sure any officer, if at all, that has such tendencies, he is immediately weeded out and punished appropriately. We cannot afford to have the armed forces of Nigeria being viewed through ethnic or religious or sectional lenses. We cannot afford that. It is very dangerous for the country. Now, the next issue I would like to say is that it's to the Tinubu administration. In the prelude to this program, you talked, and it is also in the Renewed Hope agenda, they talk of doctrine, they talk of architecture. That has been said during the campaign. But as far as concerned, up to now, we have not seen any change in doctrine. We have not seen change in architecture. People mouth the word architecture. What do you mean by architecture? Architecture does not involve only the military heads or the military chiefs. It involves even the Ministry of Defense, how it is organized. It involves the National Assembly, how they oversight. It involves even the provisions in the Constitution with regards of how the military is to be used. I do not see any changes there, even though it is too early. The government is coming, but the government has to know the promise they made for doctrine and architecture to change it for the armed forces is not there. But their work is even made simpler by the fact that the past administration did 2 reform committees whose reports have not been implemented. I want to believe if the government should look into that, all these issues we are saying, because you asked the question that, this doctrine and architecture, which is in the Renewed Hope agenda. We need to see that going. One other issue I must touch about is that, again, you mentioned the issue of security budgets. Yes, for the past year, since 2009, when Boko Haram started, the defense or security as a whole used to take a large chunk of the money. But here again, I always say that it is not like in the household. It's not, sometimes it's not the amount of money you give your housewife that will depend on how good or how well your children feed. You have to put eye on the money. We have to make sure, apart from budgeting enough, and we're not even budgeting enough, but even the one that we are budgeting, we are not following the money to see that it is used for what it's supposed to be. Their projects should be prioritized. Issues should be prioritized. The country is at war with bandits, with Boko Haram, with ISWAP, with kidnappers. Things that do not have to do with actual, solving these problems. And to some extent, the welfare of the fighting forces, we should discard them and leave them for another day. I do not see either the legislator or the executive branch doing. When I x-ray the budget of the armed forces, to be honest with you, I see issues that should not be coming up at a time when a country is facing a war. So this blame could actually go around everybody. As far as the Plateau is concerned, again, I have to call on it's the people in the Plateau that will decide they want to live in peace. Whether they are settlers,
and that's where I'd like to come in, Group Captain Shehu. You were going to conclude your thought on the creation of Just North local government being the genesis of the crisis on the Plateau. I'd like you to expound on that. Yes.
Yes. Since that creation of that local government, which over the years, if you look at the demographics of the Just North local government, is not like all the other parts of Plateau State. Now, since the creation of that local government, during Babangida administration, to be honest with you, Plateau has never known peace. There are periods of calm, depending on who is the governor, and then we have periods of reversals, as we are seeing now. So this issue has to be looked at. It is an issue of citizenship. It's an issue.
Oh dear, yet again, when that critical information is coming. We'll have to bring Group Captain Shehu back.
Apparently.
I will slightly disagree because the issue with the Just North and the other side, like I've mentioned, it's also, something that has been taken up with the police. There was a time that if you post a commissioner of police that is a Muslim to Plateau State, the other side, the Biron people, will criticize. If you post a Christian, Just North people will criticize that. And there was a time that 3 commissioners of police were changed, after each other. And when the Inspector General of Police, MD Abaka, was going to be appointed, the same thing happened, that a part of Jos said, oh, no, this person cannot be because he's a Muslim. He will suppress us in Plateau State. But what I'm saying is that if you have a uniform service, if you have a security services, military or the police, that knows that their obligation is to the Constitution, when you go on to the theater of operation, you don't look at who is a Muslim or who is a Christian. You don't look at who is an Hausa. This thing is not new. Okay. Even the allegation being made in Bauchi, Tidin Fulani, in the 90s, the same thing happened. I was in service. I followed the Deputy Inspector General of Operations then, Mr. Pari Osande, to Bauchi. And when we met on ground, it was the same issue, to say that, the uniform people, the military and the mobile police belong to this tribe or whatever. But when you have a leader that is determined to say that my job is to, work and defend the Constitution of Nigeria, you won't look at that. So if we continue to keep on saying, the politics, religion, or whatever, we should drop it a bit. We should do what is necessary, do a proper assessment of situation. That is when you will know the number of men you will use, redefine the integrated security architecture. Okay. If you are saying that the police is the lead agency with regards to internal security, why is it that the same police that's supposed to be the lead agency in internal security, that is the least funded?
Okay.
So all these things need to be put together.
Okay. That creates another question.
Yes.
Is that responsible for the contention over land that we now have? And has it created this monster,
I don't know whether we have
land grabbers, or we don't have time. We don't have time for that.
The insurgents, the bandits, they look at all this gap and they take advantage of it.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. We just wanted to, just for courtesy reasons.
Yes.
10 seconds, just land on your thoughts.
Yes, what I'm saying is that the military, the bandits, the insurgents or whatever, they've seen this gap. Some of the people that formed the bandits are probably ex-military person, ex-police person. They know all the things we do, and they take this back. So you must motivate. Don't over-rely on technology, boots on the ground, motivate them, reorientate them. That the Nigeria that we have now is not about whether I'm a Muslim or a Christian, or I'm an Hausa or a Yoruba man. That is it.
All right, we must thank you, former Commissioner of Police in Lagos State and Special Advisor on Security to the Oyo State Governor, Mr. Fatai Osheni. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights on this. I also want to thank Group Captain Sadiq Garubashe, retired security expert. Thank you so much for your thoughts on the program as well. We really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. All
right. Unfortunately, technology didn't allow you land. Perhaps it's why you say technology is not a silver bullet. But that's on a lighter note. Well, we're going to go on a quick break. When we come back after this break, we'll switch gears from security to now talk politics. 2024, there will be by-election, rerun election, and 2 governorship elections. What will happen when this happens? We'll bring you that detail when we come back. Our Abuja colleagues will be talking to you then. Join us again.
Nigeria's election year has come and gone, but will remain a watershed in the country's political history. The presidential election will be remembered as perhaps the most keenly contested in the country's recent history. Considering the vote difference among the top 3 parties, the All Progressives Congress APC, the People's Democratic Party PDP, and the Labour Party LP. The All Progressives Congress retained power at the centre, with the emergence of Senator Bola Tinubu as winner of the presidential election. But his victory was challenged majorly by the PDP and the Labour Party, all the way to the Supreme Court, which affirmed the election of Bola Tinubu.
To avert any form of confusion.
The Independent National Electoral Commission was largely criticized for the failure of the IRF portal, specifically for the presidential election. Chairman of the Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, admitted that the Commission experienced glitches in transmitting results through the IRF during the presidential election.
While voter accreditation using the bimodal voter accreditation system was very successful, the uploading of results to the INEC result viewing portal, the IREV, especially for the presidential election, encountered a glitch as explained in our statement on the 26th of February 2023.
The European Union Election Observation Mission in June released a report which described the elections as ensuring real-time publication and access to election results as a product of a poorly done desk job that relied heavily on few persons and attempting to ridicule the Nigerian electoral system and the electoral umpire. Following the governorship elections, attentions have also turned to the courts. Just like the presidential election, the Court of Appeal has sacked Governors Caleb Muftwang of Plateau State and Abba Yusuf of Kano State, while declaring the Zamfara state election inconclusive and ordering INEC to hold new elections in 2 local governments. The Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja also reserved judgment on the appeal by Governor Abdullahi Sule after a tribunal ruling nullified his re-election. Meanwhile, Nigerian politics experienced a new twist as the Labour Party, with its new leader, Mr. Peter Obi, who was also the presidential candidate of the party, pulled some surprises across the country, winning the governorship election in Abia State and unseating many lawmakers at the federal and state levels. This was also partly responsible for the large turnover of lawmakers at the National Assembly. That is almost 70% of new senators and members of the House of Representatives. The build-up to the National Assembly leadership elections was rather interesting. It appeared as though a repeat of 2015 would happen, when some members of the ruling party insisted on contesting for leadership positions, despite the stance already taken by the party to field Senators Godswill Akpabio and Jibrin Barau for Senate President and Deputy, and Honourables Abbas Tajuddin and Benjamin Kalu as Speaker and Deputy. All 4 candidates eventually emerged victorious on election day.
Of various jurisdictions.
The judiciary also found itself in the eyes of the storm, especially from the statement from retired Justice Mohammed Datijo, which further prompted calls for justice reforms.
The judiciary must be uniquely above board. Appointments should not be polluted by political, selfish, and sectional interest. The place of merit, it must be urged, cannot be overemphasized.
If we keep the trajectory that we're on right now, there will be a citizens' revolt against the judiciary. And when that happens, it would have to be a radical sweep. But we can't keep on the way we are going, where citizens are losing confidence in the judiciary. In those days, if someone offended you, you would say, I'll go to court. These days, if somebody offends you, he says to you, go to court. And you know what that means. It means that he doesn't think that the courts would give you justice.
Rivers State is currently experiencing a political crisis, which many fear could spiral out of control if not properly managed. Governor Simlayem Fubara is at loggerheads with former governor and FCT minister Nyesom Wike. The crisis has led to the burning and eventual demolition of the State Assembly buildings, series of protests, and defection of 26 state lawmakers to the APC from the PDP. President Bola Tinubu had to intervene in the rift between both men. The president also interceded in the political crisis in Ondo State, prompting the transfer of power to the deputy governor, after Governor Rotimi Akeredolu had been unable to perform his duties as governor for several months due to an undisclosed illness. President Bola Tinubu's bloated cabinet was not overlooked, as many criticized his decision to increase the number of ministers to a record 48, despite the country's economic woes and calls for a cut in the cost of governance. The presidency also came under heavy criticism for attending the COP28 in Dubai with 1,411 delegates, even though the government had explained that it only sponsored 422 of the number. To wrap up the election year, the Independent National Electoral Commission on the 11th of November successfully conducted off-cycle elections in Kogi, Imo and Bayelsa states, and is gearing up for the Edo and Ondo elections in 2024. This was a litmus test for the Commission to see what improvements will be made to the general elections.
It is possible, it's important to amend the Electoral Act on one hand to make sure that procurement is taken away from INEC so that they can focus on technical job. We have minting and printing, or we put it in the hands of sort of an independent committee that can look at it. And this is important because as long as there is struggle to manage the billions of funds being allocated to INEC in terms of printing, beaver procuring, beavers printing, ballot papers and what have you, we will continue to have these sort of issues. If next year off-cycle election is going to work, INEC has to be practical and pragmatic from this year so that the voter register there, we have to get it right and clean it up, ensure that people are able to get their voter's card on time.
Nigerians look towards an improved electoral system in 2024 as the National Assembly commences amendments to the Electoral Act, even though there are concerns about the credibility of the Electoral Commission following the appointment and confirmation of some resident electoral commissioners affiliated to political parties. Victoria Longchan for Channels Television News.
Indeed, 2023, the year that's about to go in a few hours, has been one of those years that's been turbulent, especially in the political space. We saw the emergence of new governments at both the state and federal level. But what's the plan? What's the going forward in 2024? Vis-a-vis across the country, Rivers State, Ondo State, and all the other states. Yes, some states are going to have elections this year. That's 2024, Edo, and I think Ondo State also. But let's look at this. We have here in the Abuja studio, we have Professor Jideofor Adibe, who's a professor of political science at the Nasarawa State University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And joining us virtually is Senator Enyinaya Abaribe, who's representing the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Abia South. He joins us virtually. Senator, thank you for joining us. All right, I'm sure that we'll get him on real soon. Let's start off with you, Professor Adibe. 2024 is around the corner. 2023 is done and dusted almost.
Almost.
But this year saw a keenly contested election, being in a new government, and a new, some will say, the birth of a new political system. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by the
No, not me. Some will say, this is the first time Nigeria has a thoroughbred politician as president.
Well, again, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by, because he's an accountant, at least as far as we know, and a businessman. A title is a title. You're right. It was keenly contested. It also shows a number of, shortcomings in the system, and that we still have a long way to go in our journey to nationhood. And we've seen also what I call the politicians coming in various forms of messianic packaging. And almost 8 months after, we're also having to ask ourselves, so what? It's one thing to, people were already complaining about the Buhari government and the hardship that, people believed, we had been experienced, the nepotism, the, nativism, and we were looking forward to something better. Then we have to sit back later and isolate a number of metrics, take each metric at a time and say, on this metric, is this government better than what we had? In terms of
some argue that it might be too soon, just, almost 8 months. Isn't that too soon?
Are you trying to tell me that 8 months is not sufficiently long for you to be able to decipher a direction on some fronts? I mean, people can make that argument. I'm not saying, after all, people start to judge government after 100 days. By 100 days in office, the whole essence is that it's giving you enough time for you to lay down a path on which you're going. So if we click up making excuses, the politicians, the way they work, by the second year, they are preparing for second term. Or, in fact, already the journey for 2027 has started. So we can't keep making excuses for them. That's exactly what people did for Buhari. Even the people that call themselves the Buharis, they kept telling you it was, when people complained it was taking too long to constitute a cabinet. You say, wait, be patient. After 1 year, 2, it was just up to the 7th year that even the ardent supporters started to sing a different song. By then it's late. So I think it will behoove on all of us to keep the government on its toes, interrogate every policy. That's the only way we can bring out the best in them. And we take it one at a time. For example, the signature policy that's removing subsidy, my personal opinion is that he spent these 8 months trying to manage the consequences of not having thought through that. And you can see that virtually every other thing that has been done, 90% of every other thing, has been more like looking for headlines or managing the after effects.
Professor Adibe, this decision of removing subsidy is one that has stayed in the polity for so long, and many will say there was none that had the political will to do it. So President Tinubu came in and he thought the best thing to do was, even though it had been said before him by the previous administration that he's going to go at a certain time, but he came in and used those words, he's gone. Well, some will say that is being decisive as a president.
That is being, there's also one thing, there's a difference between being decisive. You have to be decisive and then you must have put in a number of policy measures. You had 3 months from the time you were elected. So all those times you isolated yourself in France and others, there should be policy measures. For example, then all we saw was, you bring an education policy, we interrogate it and found out that it wasn't implementable. Where is the conditional cash transfer? I found out it was not properly thought through. Let me consider many governments do start on a wobbly start. But what I'm saying that it's part of our responsibilities, and not your responsibility as a media person, that we should interrogate them, hold them, say, look, this, what's happening? So that if you don't do that, we become part of the, if it fails, we become part of the failure.
Let's bring in Senator Ina Baribe of Abia South, APGA. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Okay, again, we hope that we can get him to join the conversation real soon, but we'd like to say here that we did invite the spokesperson to the president, Adjurin Galali, but he pulled out at the last minute. Hopefully we'll get him to join sometime.
I believe we can see
if you can hear us. We're looking at the year 2023. Yes, it's come and gone, and come and going.
Ticking.
But 2024 is around the corner, and Professor Adibe has just talked about the fact that it looks as if the political space, yes, keenly contested elections, but it looks as if the lessons have not been learned. And it looks as if there are still a lot of things to do even as we go into the year 2024. Do you agree with him?
Technology, okay. It happens.
Technology.
I think we'll come back to him.
We'll come back to Senator soon. Go ahead.
Professor Adibe, and this is, back to what you talked about metrics. If there were some strengths that you've seen in the last, let's say, 7 months of this administration, what would you call that, and what do you expect, in 2024?
Strength.
Yes.
Well, one thing I see, I like the communication mode, because when you show metrics, it must be in comparison to what? In comparison to the previous administration. You can see the current Minister for Information and National Orientation is quite, he uses very fine language, and the same thing with presidential spokesperson. Contrast them with what you had under Buhari, with Lai Mohammed, with Femi Adesina, with Garuba Shehu. I can see that one of the reasons why the government had not gotten so many knocks is because of this subtle communication, what we call soft power approach, where they are not combative. Even when they disagree with you, say, okay, I can see the point you're making, but that's what the Mr. President thinks. So you come in with this, looking for a fight, and the person you're taking the fight to deflates your will to fight. Enemy without a fight is the highest acme of skill, is the highest demonstration of skill. So that system of communication, PR, means that people to knock them are restrained, because people that will give them the fight, they think they don't have anybody to give them a fight. In contrast to Femi Adesina, who came around and started talking about wellers. Well, you called for a fight, they gave you a fight. And it was a brutal fight in such a way that you thought they were going to come and fight on your top. And the whole president was being called Jibril of Sudan, and some people even believed that. That was their own mode of fighting, and others fighting. So I think I'll give him credit. I'll give credit, although I am not happy that somebody like Abayo Onanuga, who proclaimed himself a Yoruba irredentist, who played a very, infamous role in the weaponization of ethnicity during the election, especially in Lagos. Other than that, I'll give them credit. I also feel that, the image of the vice, I'm not being disrespectful, the image of the First Lady and the Vice President were not really that spectacular before the election. But you can see that the way they've approached their work with compassion and all this, I think they are beginning to soften up. Even the President himself, his communication style, on the symbolic level, people thought, blue and all this, getting better in terms of speaking. Apart from those symbolic things, the real things still need to be done. It's very difficult for you to look at, for example, a potentially good policy which is subsidizing transport. You come and announce it about 4 days to the Christmas. And then giving the impression that it's one of those things that you're looking for headlines and the decision taken on the feet. And then you look at the impact assessment and they said 128 people benefited. That tells you something. And then again, when that was being announced, it was Alake, the Minister for Solid Minerals, while the Minister for Transport was there and Minister for Information. You ask yourself, what was the subtext in Alake giving this, telling the people there? Is one of two things. Either to say, well, I am closer to the epicenter of power, or this policy originated from me. These are some of the optics that I believe the government should be also looking at. As you said, there are still potential signs. We are told that Dangote refinery is coming on stream. The Port Harcourt one is mechanically completed and all this. Hopefully, and the others coming on stream at the end of 2024. If all goes well, it is possible that there should be some moderate, what the experts are saying, not crashing of price, but some reduction in the price of fuel, which probably again will impact on the demand for foreign currency. That's a hope. So we see that as a potential,
What legacy would you say INEC, is leaving Nigerians, from this general elections and, off-cycle elections we had in 2023?
I think I've said this even from 2019. INEC cannot deliver anything now because it has legitimacy crisis. The first thing that should have been done is for Professor Mahmoud Yakubu to go. I mean, in climes where honor means anything, even if you feel that you've done your best, to the extent that international and local observers have condemned, heavily criticized the conduct of the election, the best thing you should do is to step aside. His life doesn't need to depend on it. You step aside for the sake of the integrity of that institution. And for as long as it remains, I don't think anybody will believe that they will get anything from INEC. And it was also a mistake on the part of the government when they said, I can understand why they said it, that INEC has conducted the best election. I think they were trying to say it in the context of trying to legitimize their declaration as president-elect. But the consequence is that it doesn't give you room to say we are going to embark on further electoral reform, because you said they did a perfect job.
But this is the first time we're using the Electoral Act of 2022 in the general election, based on the amendments that we've had.
Well, Prof, before you go into that, I think we have Senator Abaribe with us now. Senator Abaribe, we do know that technology has kept you out of this conversation for a while, but if you can hear us, this matter of the elections of 2023, yes. What legacy are we looking at towards 2024? Seeing that this is the first time the Electoral Act of 2022 was used, and there are 2 more elections to go in 2024.
I don't know whether you can hear me very well now.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I think what is going to happen is that there must be, and we will just have to amend that Electoral Act and remove the human element from it. Because all that happened was simple. In the presidential elections, somebody switched off the presidential portal. And that completely spoiled everything about the presidential elections. In the subsequent gubernatorial elections, people literally seized the ballot papers and the beavers and the final result sheets and uploaded whatever they wanted on it, which means that that human element gap is what we need to clear.
Senator Abaribe,
that's all we have to do about
if I may come in here, you said something there that's quite significant. You said someone switched up the presidential portal. Do you have evidence of this? How did you know that?
INEC itself said they had a glitch. What glitch? On the same time, the same day, the same moment that the results for the senatorial and House of Rep results were also uploaded. There was no glitch on that one. So when somebody tells you that there was a glitch on the presidential portal, how could you believe such thing? They were just being very economical with the truth.
Well, you know, this matter of removing the human element in the...
Like I said, the human element, which means something happened there. It was done deliberately. If there was a glitch, it should have happened in the senatorial and the House of Rep elections, which was taking place at the same time. So when two things are happening at the same time and all that, if something looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, what do you call it? It's a duck.
Senator Baribe, if I may come in, and this is because we want to look towards 2024, because one would say that, you know, the matter has been in courts, the Supreme Court has made the decision on it, and we've moved away from that presidential election. So there is the question of the Electoral Act now. And as a senator, do you think that it still needs tinkering? And this is to represent properly what you think are the aspirations of Nigerians when it comes to a proper, credible, free, fair general election?
My view is simple. It's not the act. It is the operators of the system that are the people. So it does not matter how much we tinker with it. So long as somebody is prepared to do the wrong thing, they will do it. And so it has to do with the orientation of the person. And that's why I said, if we can remove the human element, if we can now use technology, if we can now come to the point where I can use my phone and get a code and vote, and nobody touches it, and that vote is tallied somewhere, then we won't have all these problems anymore. But so long as there's somebody who's going to stay there to decide whether it's going to go in or not, that person can be compromised, and that will mean that we cannot have this. And then every time we will now say, okay, tinker with the system. We did a lot in the 2023 Act. We did everything. We made sure that we could use technology to get us to the point where we are. We never knew that somebody could tamper with the INEC system, as it were.
Okay, would we be looking at completely electronic, both for voting and transmission of the results?
Precisely. That's exactly what I mean. Once it's completely electronic, there's no way again anyone can manipulate it. That's all.
Professor Dibe, do you agree in the age
it doesn't matter.
AI,
it doesn't matter what we do.
I just have a little to add to it.
Go ahead. Yes.
Go ahead, Professor.
Professor Dibe.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to agree with Senator Baribe, but I will also add a different dimension. It's not just for me enough to talk about the human element or the law. In the social sciences, we have what we call the structure agency debate. If you want to bring transformation, what do you change? Where do you focus? Is it the structure, the environment, or the human agents? In our own, both are very important. It's like the chicken and egg argument. Which one do you focus on? So if you don't understand, first, why are elections anarchic? Why are contestations for power tending towards the Hobbesian state of nature? First, you will go into the environmental explanation. If you look at the presidential election, the stakes are too high. If you capture presidential power, everything is decided in your favor. You can use that power to privilege your in-group and, disadvantage the rivals to your in-group. That has been a very fundamental thing. So, and it's a winner takes all. So that's the environmental fact. If you don't change that environmental aspect of the structural constraints and focus on the human, and you can only preach to them, don't do this and don't do that. You can go and preach to somebody who is angry that others are cheating him not to cheat. So I think for me, that's why I've been recommending us, often as I have the opportunity, that we should move away. People have been questioning now, from Obasanjo to Fayemi, former governor of Ekiti State, to Atiku, whether the presidential system, the current liberal democracy as practiced is what we need. You ask yourself, why do you need election? You need it for leadership recruitment. Do you think elections, as currently conducted, leads to people selecting the best? The answer is no. Do people believe that their votes count? No. So what is then what is the impact of the entire election? What it does is that it widens the social distance because various primordial identities are mobilized. So each time you organize this in every 4 years, you undermine the nation-building process. So part of my suggestions are that why don't we have a rotational presidential council along the lines of what we have in Switzerland, so that they take one person from each geopolitical zone. They take two years. That gives you 12 years, and we take a break from politics. And the feeling, the anarchic nature, that if this man goes there, they will disadvantage me, probably will be attenuated. And if that structural element is taken care of, we can then come to the idea of the law to cement it. But if we focus on only one, and even if no matter what you do with the Electoral Act, people will be 2 steps ahead. And as Senator rightly pointed out, we went back, the election after the presidential election and the National Assembly, we went back to 1999 to 2007. Crude politics, crude godfatherism, ballot snatching, things that we left behind. And that shows you the primacy of politics.
So this form you've mentioned, is there a form of restructuring? Who would bail the cat? What you talk about, rotational...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It is difficult because every form of, if you want to reform a system, it often involves whittling down the power of the incumbent. If you look at the US reports, one of the reasons it was not implemented was that the Attorney General said, look, we ask you to do this, and the recommendations all amount to reducing the power of the president. Do I see the current government embarking on any form of electoral reform? I don't. They've already said that INEC conducted the best election in the history of the country, which means there's no room for improvement. So I don't see them doing that, because anytime you embark on reform, you cannot go and say, okay, President Tinubu, now go and do a reform of rotational president, and somebody who is already planning for second term, for him to forgo. Politicians don't do that. Not just him, all politicians in Nigeria.
Senator Baribe, this matter of changing the environment even before the law, some will say, first of all, this Electoral Act was within the legislature. It was the National Assembly that passed this Electoral Act of 2022. You had the opportunity to take out the human element, but you and your colleagues did not do a good job of it. What's the guarantee that would happen? Tie that to what the professor has talked about, changing the environment, make public office inattractive, if I'm getting you right. Make public office unattractive, and then do rotational presidency.
Well, I don't know how you're going to do it. We were having the parliamentary system. It didn't work. Then we now are in the presidential system. It's still not working. So, Prof, I think what Prof needs is that you need to really change the human beings in Nigeria. There's no other way you can do any other thing, because it doesn't matter what system we use. Once people are overwhelmed by greed and the contestation for power and are willing to do anything about it and don't have the national ethos that will make them see that this is something you need to do in a right manner. I don't think that there's any way we can change it. Other contests here, and they win things. How did they do it? There's no contest. It's just technology. And that's all that we need to deploy. And just remove the human being coming in between you and your ballot paper. That's all.
All right, well, that will be a good place for us to leave it there. I want to say thank you so much to Senator Aina Baribe, who joined us from Abia State, representing Abia South from the All Progressive Grand Alliance. Thank you so much, Senator Grand Alliance. Thank you so much, Senator Baribe.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
I'm Professor Jidofa Adibe, Professor of Political Science at Nasarawa State University. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to state here that we also invited the spokesperson to the president, Ajirin Galali, but he couldn't make it at the last moment. Hopefully we'll hear from him real soon as we're going to do. But that's it from this segment on the show today. We'll take a moment and we'll be back. Our Lagos crew. Insecurity in parts of Nigeria, as well as flooding, remain key drivers to the deteriorating humanitarian crisis situation in the country for over a decade now. The situation is so dire, especially in northern Nigeria, forcing an estimated 8.3 million people into conditions that need urgent assistance. That's according to the United Nations report for the month of March 2023. The report further states that over 80% of the population needing humanitarian assistance are women and children, while projecting an estimated 4.4 million others that might be facing hunger by mid-2024. In other parts of the country, flooding, kidnappings, and secession agitations have plunged many into conditions needing urgent humanitarian assistance. The federal and state governments have continued to respond to some of these humanitarian needs in ways. In most cases, the victims of flooding are relocated and supplies of essential commodities and food distributed. The federal government has also continued to drive some existing policies aimed at ameliorating the sufferings of Nigerians. Some of those interventions include the distribution of 5 billion naira as palliatives to states in the month of August, the conditional cash transfer to a targeted 15 million poor and vulnerable Nigerians, and the N-Power program, which targets unemployed Nigerians between the ages of 18 and 35.
So first, what we've been able to do today, we have flagged off officially the renewed hope grant for very poor and vulnerable in society. We've seen several businesses, petty traders, and we have supported them now. So we have given them support, transfers, grants to support their little businesses and expand on those businesses.
These efforts of government, however, appear to be undermined by rising inflation, largely driven by the high cost of petrol, owing to the removal of fuel subsidy. That removal of fuel subsidy and the resultant hike in the price of petrol pitched Nigerian workers against the government as protests rocked most parts of the country. In response, the federal government announced a 35,000 naira wage award for workers, even as some state governments gave a pay rise to their workers, provided buses, and others approved a staggered work schedule to cushion the effect of the hike in transportation costs.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, good morning.
We reviewed the outgoing year and government's responses to labor agitations with the president of the Trade Union Congress, Mr. Festus Osifo.
For us, we would not say that those meetings have yielded nothing or they have also achieved 100%. So we could say that maybe we could give them about 40% mark. And for us, 40% mark is not a pass mark. So, like I would say, the labor-government relationship is a continuous one. It is not a sprint, but a marathon. So on our path, we will continuously press harder to see that government respect the full dictate of what is there in the MOU that was signed with government.
As the year 2023 winds down, many wish it will roll by with all its challenges, while they look forward to a new year with optimism for a prosperous 2024.
Nigeria has been known as the giant of Africa, but what awaits the giant in 2024? Maybe a look back into 2023 could help in predicting its future, especially under a new administration, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's. The new president had the Niger coup fallout to deal with as the first international issue, setting the tone of being a hardline decisive leader when he announced ECOWAS would employ the use of force in returning the civilian rule of President Mohamed Bazoum. He was backed by the regional body, and during the weeks that followed, he would explain Nigeria had no intention of invading neighboring Niger, but that ECOWAS would prepare for a possible military intervention. The president went on to be Nigeria's #1 salesman when he began proposing Nigeria's readiness to welcome more international investors. He sought to reassure authorities of renewal of ties by resuming visa issuance from Dubai, the UAE. Nigerians make up the largest group of travelers to the UAE, and the government restoring visa issuance for Nigerians would balance economic and diplomatic relations between the two countries. President Tinubu returned from the meeting in Dubai, celebrating that an agreement had been reached, but the Dubai government only confirmed it was working through the fine print of the deal. President Tinubu continued his mission at the G20 meeting held in India. On the sidelines, he held meetings with U.S. President Joe Biden, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and World Bank President Ajay Banga, among others. Again, reiterating Nigeria was open to international investors. The same message was preached in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, during the first Saudi-Africa summit. There, he underscored Nigeria's commitment to attracting more foreign direct investment and expanding business partnerships, which are strongly reinforced by his administration's ongoing domestic economic reforms. He promised the bottlenecks had been removed and there would be huge return on investments.
The change is right here. Perception of Nigeria has been that of layback, corruption, and giant of Africa with elephantiasis. But that is gone. The realization of that hope is here. The belief is here. The change of the perception is right here. Forget the categorization of corruption. Forget it. It won't happen no more.
Convinced, the Saudi government established the Saudi Nigerian Business Council and assured the first meeting will hold in Nigeria. Not long after, President Tinubu joined other African heads of state and governments of the G20 Compact with Africa in Berlin, Germany. Speaking at the 10th German-Nigerian Business Forum, the president assured German businesses that with Nigeria's stable political landscape, foreign investments into the country are secure. The president's shuttle diplomacy for the year ended with his attendance of the COP28 climate summit in Dubai, where he witnessed the signing of an accelerated performance agreement between Nigeria and Germany to improve Nigeria's electricity supply.
The measures that were taken here, that we will We've signed off on reduction of methane.
He also hosted a high-level meeting with stakeholders and investors on the Nigeria carbon market and the electric buses rollout program. The president also held bilateral talks with King Charles of England, the president of UAE, and leaders of several countries and multilateral partners to concretize engagements. Nigerians critical of the nation hopping are eager to see fruits of the president's trip, hoping that better positioning will translate into stronger foreign policy expressions.
In our last segment, we'll look at the humanitarian efforts of the federal government and their efforts to draw in contributions to the economy from the diaspora. We have joining us virtually, we have Anquio Briggs, an environmentalist and human rights activist who joins us virtually. Okay, we'll get to hear her real soon. And then we have here in our Abuja studio, Abdulrahman Tarab, former member of the House of Representatives and director of this, Ms. Anquio Briggs. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy New Year.
Advance. Okay, here we have Abdulrahman Tarab, former member of the House of Representatives and director, technology transfer and innovation at NICOM. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Compliments of the season.
Thank you as well. So we've looked at two issues. We've played two reports, and this is before we come to Nigeria's relations with the rest of the world, where Honorable Tarab, you come in. I want to go quickly to Madam Briggs, and this is to talk about the humanitarian, your assessment of the humanitarian efforts of the federal government. And we've talked about what has happened in 2023, and some would say still ongoing, but projecting into 2024, because when you look a little bit about some of the data that we have from Biscon Consulting Limited on social upheaval, it says there were so many protests and riots, the frequency, the whole of this year, 2023. It was characterized by widespread protests, civil disobedience, public discontent. It said civil actions were rooted in grievances that were related to inequality, injustice, and human rights violations, among others. So in projecting into 2024, do you think that it will be better in terms of federal government's handling of its humanitarian efforts?
First of all, we must accept that the social insecurity and social upheaval and the fact that Nigeria really does not have so far, after so many years of independence, we do not have a social system that should do the job for humanity when it is needed. We don't have that system yet. That was very evident when the pandemic struck, and the World Bank actually did say then that only about 2% of people and that actually had access to the ad hoc social service system or structure that Nigeria was trying to put in place, and hence we now have the word palliative. Palliative is really a different word, and it's applicable in a different circumstances, and not really in the circumstances of helping people in times of disaster, in times of, if you like, natural disaster, human disaster that we face purposefully through criminality, through the sort of upheaval you have just shown us with the pie graphs you've shown us. All these have started quite a long while back. And if we look to January till December now, I think since after the swearing in of this government, it has increased to the point where in just on Christmas Eve, we had all that killings and murders that went on, where we are referring to them as criminals and criminality. It is not. These are things that people have sat down and thought through and have executed on the heads of other human beings that are Nigerians. Now, that the fact that this federal government has come to inherit that is a huge problem for us, but that it will change without actually assuring or ensuring security in Nigeria. And no matter how much we project and hope and pray, if we're not able to cut this off and to really stop this invasion that is coming into Nigeria from outside of Nigeria, we're really just fooling ourselves. And no matter how much the government wants to assure us with its promises and the figures and the hopes that it has, the reality is that these things don't seem as if they're going to stop anytime soon.
But Madam Briggs, just to jump in, I mean, perhaps these problems do have to stop because people are suffering. The number of IDPs are increasing. We have the federal government give out palliatives. You said palliatives are not sufficient. Some say they are perhaps short-term relief efforts that can, ameliorate the pain for the now. What do you suggest that they do? And this is for the relief efforts nationwide as we go into 2024.
Well, quite honestly, whether we like it or not, we have to have a system that first and foremost will not entertain or allow corruption. Corruption in every ramification, whether it is corruption in bringing in or in creating, manufacturing drugs that will actually kill people, whether they are dissidents or whether they are displaced peoples, and giving them good housing, good health care, this help that they're supposed to receive. I mean, during just a little bit of personal experience during the war, I mean, we had relief coming into the then eastern part of Nigeria. And the sort of help we were getting were flown in from outside. And as far as they were coming in from outside, there were good quality drugs, they were good quality food, they were powdered food, they were not expired. And so now that we have so many decades of experience in Nigeria, I think that when our people are in trouble, we should already have a system that will respond immediately. That's why we have NEMA. And when you have NEMA, and what NEMA ends up doing with all the billions of naira is deliver zincs, is deliver mattresses, is deliver blankets, and they're not able to deliver food, they're not able to deliver quality health care and even education while those the people that are displaced are displaced. We have a very long way to go. We really have to set up a system that is going to learn from other countries and other bodies that have known what to do over decades, so that it actually becomes something that you go into, a mode you go into, immediately you sense problem, and not start running around like headless chickens that happens from these so-called organizations or parastatals in Nigeria, where quite honestly help don't get to the people until weeks or sometimes even months later, and where individuals and people are able to help more than even the government itself. Sadly, Nigeria does not yet have a welfare system. We should not allow the government to deceive us that there is a welfare system. There is no workable welfare system.
We would like to bring in our guest here, who is here in our Abuja studio, Honorable Turab. And this is talking about Nigeria's relations with the rest of the world. When they say Nigeria outside, what do people think of?
Well, Nigeria has many faces. And you can look at it from various perspectives, even though this is not my area of core competence. But of course, Nigeria means a lot of things to a lot of people. Of course, a particular scenario is that of recent we've heard records of migrating into Nigeria, as well as having the Japa syndrome, people migrating out of Nigeria. So while some people see opportunities elsewhere, as well others see opportunities in Nigeria. And I think that depends on the side that you're looking at.
One question is, are we going to have Japa as well as much as we had in 2023, in 2024, do you think?
Well, you know, we've always, seen Japa from two particular perspectives. There is always the push factor, and there is always the pull factor. I think what has actually exacerbated Japa in the last year specifically, or the last 2 years, is as a result of the outfall of COVID-19, which affected most of the developed countries, which actually had a lot of effect on their, care system that required them to kind of call to action, request for services across the world that will be able to support their system. That was the pull factor. And of course, it became, at a point in time, we've had reports where, as someone who is in the care industry, you don't even need to have a visa. The moment you get to the border, you'll be given visa and you'll be certified and be able to provide services in those locations. So these are the issues. And I believe what has actually exacerbated it much more than we've seen in the past is actually the current pull factor across the globe. And then we also need to understand that the global demography is also changing. Most countries are now having older populations. Most countries are now having need to require labor force from the rest of the world, where such services are not that they are not provided, but of course maybe they are not well remunerated as it is in their places. So
is that also fueling that look at drawing contributions from the diaspora into the economy?
Well, you see, that's the other side of it for those of us in the Diaspora Commission and in the diaspora industry. Some people might look at the negative effect of it, and then we're also looking at some of the positive side of it. We've always tried to see the diaspora phenomenon as an investment and a development factor. Because up until now, most people look at it from a social perspective. I'm here, in the humanitarian session. Ordinarily, it's an economic issue. It's a development factor. And of course, we can now compare that to many other countries. History should be able to teach us that Israel developed from its diaspora. Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, developed from its diaspora. China developed from its diaspora. India is developing from its diaspora. So we need to now properly situate the human capital element of our development indices to see how we can get much benefit from that, take advantage of that. Because it's not all negative to some of us in the diaspora, in the diaspora area. We now look at it as there are some, what you may now be seeing as a completely negative effect has its own positive effect, even though it may take a while.
All right, our colleagues in Lagos have a couple of questions for you. Buki, Jeffrey?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Jeffrey, you were going to go first.
Yes, but don't go ahead.
Let me quickly follow up on that, Mr. Tirab. You have rightly observed that the push and pull factors are a development issue. They're issues that have to do with the economy. But more importantly, do you see the deliberateness, the intentionality of the administration to address the push and pull factors such that, we can stem the tide in the mass exodus of Nigerian professionals, which is beginning to affect a number of sectors now beyond the medical sector. And this is instructive because, you know, we cannot continue to rely on the remittances and the exchange programs. A number of our institutions, you know, are experiencing a dearth in the number of professionals. So do you see a commitment either in the programs of the administration or even in the budgetary commitments of the 2024 appropriation bill to stem the tide in the push and pull factors? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Terab, that's for you.
There is what we call the managed labor migration system. And right from the onset, we have always advocated for that. And interestingly, we have a labor migration policy, 2014, which was approved by the Federal Executive Council at that time. And I believe that is the way to go. The issue is you cannot run away from the fact that, first of all, migration is a human right, is a fundamental human right, so long as migration is done legally and regularly. Now, the other issue is there is the need, latching on the National Labor Migration Policy, for us to now be deliberate about assessing our human capital, the need for us to assess and regulate the nation's human capital endowment generally. Now, that will mean there is the need for government to understand that there are areas that we require to be deliberate about ensuring that we maintain the necessary capital and human investments in these areas, while also trying as much as possible to provide for the, so to say, for the occupation of these areas, so long as it's going to be dynamic. What I'm trying to say here is that by 2050, it is projected that Nigeria will become 400 million in population. And whether we prepare for it or not, but there is the need for us to prepare for it, is that there are going to be global occupations. And there is the need for the country to prepare for these global occupations, so that we all know that the absorptive capacity in the country has its own issues. And there is no way we can be able to absorb the entire labor force that will be part of that 400 million in the next 30 years. So there is the need for us to start to prepare now. Now, the way to go, the government of the day, of course, heavily led by President Aswaju Bola Tinubu, is actually looking at these core areas. You can see the issue of bringing in investments across the world, which we believe that by that is going to have effect on creating avenues for job creation. But what is even most important is the issue of remuneration, which the government has made efforts clearly and is making its statement that remunerations are going to be reviewed. And we believe that these are areas that such labor migration can be managed. But most importantly, the nation must be involved and must be deliberate about what labor is, what part of the labor it should use, and deliberately, determine the labor that it is going to export. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Terab, there's another aspect to the question of your commission, which has to do with the people A lot of Nigerians have traveled out of the country. There's a report we're about to play now that will give you an insight of how many people have left or what is the driver of this particular Japa syndrome, as we call it. But of concern to me personally is the fact that this movement, sometimes we see some people in a very dire situation. Nigerians not as respected as they should be because of some of the things they've gone through. And even in African countries, here Nigerians are treated. So people that are remitting tens of billions of dollars in terms of all those remittances, the federal government has to do more in terms of protecting the image of these people, irrespective of how they went. I'm not saying supporting illegality as long as they are citizens. But let's take a watch, let's take a listen or see this particular report, and we'll come back to that question.
From passport offices to embassies and then international airports. They are young, educated, skillful, but desperate to leave. A vast wave of emigration is sweeping through Nigeria. Visa applicants arrive here, one of the visa centers in Lagos. More applicants bearing envelopes troop in and out of several other foreign embassies and visa centers. Some contact their agents seeking shortcuts or faster ways of completing the process, but their patience is tested as they're made to wait for many hours and sometimes the whole day without success. For some, it's a journey that begins with hope but often ends in despair. Some Nigerians dispose of their properties in distress sale, and some also borrow monies to migrate in search of greener pastures. Others are promised jobs abroad that don't exist, and in the process, many are scammed. On the flip side, it's a beehive of activities as hawkers cash in on the situation to market their products. But let's put some numbers to this scenario. Some experts are concerned about the negative implications.
Nigeria is blessed when it comes to natural and human resources. We are blessed in both ways, and it's disturbing in the fact that the best are leaving in terms of our medical doctors and nurses and our engineers, and a lot is just leaving the country.
But it's a sentiment others disagree with.
The Japa syndrome is a two-way street. What's the two-way? We tend to pay attention only to the outflux of people who are applying for school, applying for skilled hire, or relocating to other climes. Nobody is paying attention to how many people are actually returning to Nigeria. I mean, if you take a good statistics, which I would like to point out, a great number of the businesses in the private sector today that are either unicorns, startups, thriving businesses were set up by people who we classify as returnees.
Nigeria continues to lose medical experts to other countries, but as doctors continue to leave, shrinking the healthcare workforce drastically below the WHO's recommendation of 1 doctor to 1,000 patients. Dr. Jean Nassar, a Lebanese IVF specialist, has been practicing in the country since 2020. He wants the government to improve the quality of healthcare delivery in order to reduce the number of doctors leaving the country, as well as curb medical tourism.
All the health system here need to be more, if you want, taken care of. We need more good hospitals, good centers, and we need mostly the good doctors not to leave, and good nurses also. Good nurses and good doctors should not leave Nigeria, but for them not to leave, we should offer them maybe good centers and good hospitals so they can still work here.
These analysts agree that the government must take this as a challenge and make living in the country so attractive so as to discourage the massive exodus of citizens.
one of the things we always advise governments to look at critically is the value that their bilateral relationships with other countries is producing for our citizens. I mean, the ease of doing business, quality of living, exchange programs, whether it's educational programs or business programs, access to exchange treaties. These things are very key to ensuring that one country can create an enabling environment, not only for her citizens, but to attract foreigners who consider that place a great place with ease of doing business.
I don't think Nigerians are asking the government for too much. I think if the government can prioritize energy in terms of power, infrastructure, and Nigerians just want to see a government that is ready to invest in the people, in trying to eradicate poverty.
So the expression on the faces of these visa applicants tell the story of desperation. They want to get out of the country by all means and all cost. And that's why some go through the Sahara Desert and others attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea, thereby putting their lives in harm's way. But the big question perhaps is just how green is the pasture on the other side. From the Victoria Island area here in Lagos, Kelly Egiga, Channels Television News.
So, Mr. Terab, I'm sure you've seen that lovely report and all the perspective that's been shared.
Yes.
The question naturally is, irrespective of the reason for moving, whether it's greener or not greener, my concern is about the protection of these citizens beyond, you know, just looking at remittances and all the beautiful things we could say come from abroad, from our citizens. Our citizens need to be protected. What is NITCOM and the rest of the federal government doing to ensure that whether people choose to leave the country in 2024 more or less, wherever they are not intimidated, they are not subjected to some level of hardship that we see and report sometimes?
Thank you very much. As you may have known, since the inception of NITCOM 3.5 years ago, or 4 years ago actually, the advocacy for the support of the importance of the dignity and the life of a Nigerian in a foreign country has very well been kind of upscaled, so much so that so many countries now take a serious concern when a Nigerian is involved in any incident that violates either their rights, their dignity, or affects their lives. We have, on a daily basis, been engaging with countries here locally in Nigeria, and as well as with them over there. We have situations where Nigerian lives were lost. I can tell you that the Commission, alongside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the embassies over there, are doing a lot to ensure that, one, redress is sought and achieved, and two, but most importantly, is that such nations come alive to start to appreciate that the life of the Nigerian matters. However, we also need to understand that at the moment, we are still in the beginning stages. Just like I said, there is the need for all of us as a nation to understand that the diaspora phenomena is an economic and development phenomenon. To that extent, we need to attach much more importance than just relating with our citizens, because we need to value them as a major source of our capital. And to that extent, we can be able to now attach the importance that they that it deserves to have. And this has been our advocacy across the board, from the establishment of the Commission to our dealings with the National Assembly and the federal government as well for them to understand that there is the need for us to attach that. And while I'm telling you this, while I'm saying this, I can assure you that there has been marked response from both the federal government and the National Assembly in this regard. If you've seen the reports of the submission of the House Senate Committee on Diaspora and Intergovernmental Affairs a few days ago to the Appropriations Committee, they made mention of the fact that the diaspora phenomenon is so important, such that the country needs to fund it and ensure that our citizens are engaged more, not only on a responsive basis, but as well as reactive basis, but on a proactive basis. So I can assure you that this year there appears to be some progress, and we believe that in 2024 you are going to see marked progress. But also, let me please use this medium to commend the leadership of the current chairman, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, who ingeniously goes out of her way to ensure that she has personal touch with victims and also ensure that she engages every sector of the system in addressing issues that deal with Nigerians who are violated in every
all right, Mr. Terab. Just as some people are resigning from the country and heading out of the country to go and pursue other interests, there are people who are also resigning right here in the country to maybe pursue other interests politically. One of the big resignations, and this is coming to the question will be posed to Ms. Briggs. We just got this information that the Edison here just wrote to the national chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Edison here, for those of you who are not familiar, I can see that letter there, resigning as Speaker of the State House of Assembly in Rivers State. It was one of the 4 during that division in the state, an imbroglio that we see still going on because we know the resolution and what it says. But it says, this is to formally notify you of my voluntary resignation as Speaker, member of the 10th Rivers State House of Assembly, representing our East constituency, with effect from this date of this late letter. I wish to deeply appreciate my colleagues and the people of my constituency for the opportunity to continue and hope to continue to give my utmost best in the service of Rivers State subsequently. So Edison here has resigned from the Rivers State House of Assembly. Madam Ankyo Briggs, would like your response on this latest development in Rivers politics.
As I speak to you right now, based on everything surrounding what has so far transpired politically in my state, I can tell you without having too much information right now as I'm on air with you, is the honorable thing to do. I think that it takes greatness to be able for someone like Edison to be able to make that decision. There is an extent to which someone's arm could be twisted, and you would have to say, shall I let my hand break, or shall I move on while my hand has not been broken? I think that's where Edison finds himself. I wouldn't want to go too much into it because it's about my state, and I will get more information and probably even get to speak with Edison in the new year. But for right now, I would think, knowing the circumstances before now, I think it's an honorable thing that he did.
And we wonder if there'll be more resignations from the Rivers State Assembly in the new year. But we'll wait, and Trust Channels Television will be right here to bring you all of the breaking stories. And that will be all from here. Back to you, Nyota and Millicent.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Honorable Abdulrahman Tarab, former member of the House of Representatives and Director, Technology Transfer and Innovation, NITCOM. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Madam Ankyo Briggs, environmentalist and human rights activist, thank you for joining us for this segment, and we do wish you a wonderful 2024.
You're muted. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
All right, indeed. So, Geoffrey and Bukola, this is where we say, the celebration continues. And remember, in 2023 also, Channels Television won a couple of awards, one of them being the TV Station of the Year for the 16th time.
Well. Winner, Television Station of the Year, goes to Channel.
And indeed, what a year it has been.
It's quite a journey. May their souls rest.
Rest in peace.
In peace. Nyota, Millicent, that's it from all of us right here.
Yes, we also must not forget those that we've lost, as a result of insecurity in Plateau and other states across the country, the dearly departed.
They'll all be in our memories and in our prayers as we even get into the year 2024. Millicent, yes. Geoffrey and Bukola, 2023 is out, almost out. And we will be signing out from here. We wish our viewers, our audience, our partners, our friends, we wish you all, we're grateful to you. We're grateful for you, and we want to wish you a fantastic 2024 from all of us here at Channels Television. Want to let you know that they say the reward for hard work is more work.
Yeah.
So we will do our best to keep you informed. We'll do our best to tell the stories as they are. We'll do our best to let you know that we are there for you.
Yes, but I believe our viewers as well can do something, and that is also join in creating a better world. Thank you so much. I'm Millicent Walker. Let's continue to remain ubiquitous.
And I'm Neo Taibe.
And it's a good time, to say that our prayers with, the men and women who, keep us safe on the borders and all fronts in areas that are challenged by insecurity. Our prayers are with you. And to all Nigerians, keep your commitment and patriotism to the country. Channels Television will continue to bring you stories in the coming year. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeff Rizana. Thank you so much on behalf of everybody behind the scene that you've not seen. Thank you, and God bless you.